Hello and welcome to Hindsighting, where we discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best, or is time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clow. My guests today are Kalen Egan and Travis Sentell, who first collaborated on the Amazon series Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams. Kalen served as a writer-producer on all 4 seasons of Amazon's The Man in the High Castle. He then worked as a staff writer for the Netflix series Kaleidoscope. Travis wrote on NBC's The Thing About Pam. Together they hosted the podcast Does Your Favorite Movie Suck? Kalen and Travis, welcome back to Hindsighting.
Hey,
thanks for having us back.
Today we're hindsighting the Best Picture of 1986, Platoon. From 8 nominations, it also won Oscars for Best Director, Best Editing, and Best Sound. It was nominated against Children of a Lesser God, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Mission, and A Room with a View. All right, guys. So you guys were on the very first 1981er.
Yeah.
Which was Modern Romance.
It felt great.
It felt great. Yes.
It did.
Yeah, it was a great episode. So I don't know if we had this conversation then, but I want to have it just for the sake of continuity. That was a conversation about 1981. I want to obviously broaden this out to talk about the 80s. So I think the 80s was just an incredible decade in movies. And my thesis for this season is, do the Best Picture winners and nominees reflect that? We're just past the halfway point. We're in the mid 80s right now. And I think in this decade, whether these movies were recognized by the Academy or not, I think comedy is never stronger than it is in the 80s. I think action is absolutely at its height in the 80s. I also think adult dramas are really strong in the 80s, just movies for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Horror is very strong in this decade. I just think, and I don't think you could say that about any other decade. I mean, the worst thing you could say about the 80s, if you're a fan of these genres, is musicals were dead, westerns were dead, but musicals and westerns die and they come back, and they die and they come back. We're all old enough to have seen the musical and the western die and come back. It's just, I'm not even gonna say it's cyclical. It's just like Lazarus. It just rises from the dead. So, I mean, I guess I'll just throw this super broad. When you guys think about the 80s movies, what do you think about?
Well, I mean, I'll maybe answer that by specifically speaking about this year, which was like, you had this whole premise about 81, and I'm sure that's a strong premise. But in the I can swear.
Yeah.
In the weeks, because I'm gonna get enthusiastic, I'm gonna fucking swear.
He's a swear machine.
I don't think any children are listening to a Platoon podcast.
Well, this isn't about adult. You said it. It's like films for adults is a conversation for adults.
Yes,
but
I agree.
We're gonna get dirty.
No.
Because you invited us to do the show something like 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, something like that. And so in that period of time, I was like, all right, cool, 86, which I picked kind of, you were like, hey, here's a bunch of years.
You guys chose this.
We chose it because I was like,
why? Yeah.
Basically, my choice was I don't want to do 1989 because I'm scared to be the one who has to talk about how good Do the Right Thing is because it's the greatest movie of the 80s. But 86, I was like, oh yeah, I know a lot of these movies. Since then, Travis knows this. Every single day, I'll wake up in the morning and start texting Travis about like, dude, I watched this movie from 86 and it was unreal.
This is an incredible year. Yeah.
Dude, the depth of it was out of control. And I came away with a different concept of what any given year might contain in the 80s or, 70s or whatever, in the 90s. And I came away asking myself, when did this start falling? When did this level of variety,
creativity,
depth, maturity, creativity, when did that actually start to wane? Because I had this idea in my head that like, oh yeah, 90s were peak years, but I was alive in the 90s and I've seen a lot of movies from the 90s and I don't think they had a bench this deep, like, and not in the sort of like studio quality, of just like the mainstream stuff. Like
these are all studio movies that we're talking about.
There were a lot of
today.
good studio. Well, on the Oscars nominees for sure, but like the depth of the indies were like incredible. The depth of the genre stuff was incredible. The foreign films of this era were incredible of this year. All the stuff I was watching was just like, oh, it made me so sad to be alive right now. I was like, dude, I want to go back so badly to when this kind of thing was what you go to every week. Every single week you were getting a classic, it felt like.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I couldn't believe I had the same experience as Kalen. I'd seen some of the movies of this year, but really went deep and got to watch tons of 86 movies.
Yeah.
And Kalen made this point via text, which was it's such an interesting way to go through filmographies instead of going through top 100 lists or top 10 lists or something, picking a year and going deep on that year.
Yeah.
Especially in years that you've lived through that you know culturally.
Right.
I when I first started, I had a hard time separating say, cultural impact from, or personal cultural impact from artistic excellence. There was a lot of bleed over there.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do I love this movie? Is it because it's good? Let me go back and check and look. Because I made a list of the 10 movies that were most important to me. This is prime.
From 86?
Yes.
Oh, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, just because they're not the best movies by any stretch of the imagination, but I was 7. That is prime coming of age storytelling time. I was a reading kid.
Okay.
But also there were so many movies that were like, oh yeah, this movie was formative. Oh, this movie was also formative. So for me, I was kind of trying to parse out excellence of movies, the year, and also what it meant to me. And those were all different metrics that I found really interesting to think about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So you were 7 in 86. I was 8.
7, yeah.
So we're close in age. I think you're a few years younger.
Yeah, I was 3.
That's not
about that?
That's the wrong age. You were the wrong age.
Well,
It just gives me objectivity.
to answer your question, Kalen, and this is going to be a bit of a groaner for devotees of this podcast. Your question is, when did this all stop?
Yeah.
Or when did this?
Yeah.
For me, you might not agree, given what you said about the 90s. I feel like this stopped January 1st, 2000. Right. I don't know what happened. I feel like at the stroke of midnight of Y2K, movies got worse. Not bad, and I think we've come back a long way from there. But I think everything I said about the 80s, I think largely applies to the 90s too, except in the 90s is a much bigger indie footprint. Because we have Tarantino and Soderbergh and Linklater and
Sure,
but Sundance is a bigger factor. Because Sundance at this point is going on, but we're 3 years before Sex Lies, so Sundance is
I
not
know,
giving
but
us
I didn't know that all the origins also were here, because you get She's Gotta Have It. You had Jim Jarmusch doing Down by Law. You had At Close Range. You had, which was James Foley, who I know he went a little more mainstream, but like, and then you had more. There were other ones too that I was like on my list.
No, it's going. Indie films are going
they're
on.
all there.
They just haven't crossed the street into the mainstream
That's
yet.
right.
But yeah, I've said that.
Absolutely right.
I've said that indie movies are going on in the 80s, but it isn't until literally 89, 90 where my grandparents went and saw Sex Lies and Videotape in the theater. And I mean, I was I guess 11 then, but I was like, whoa, that was a sign to me that like, oh, this is like not just, this is like cross the street. And then obviously, I mean, Tarantino, I think rightfully is pretty much for most people, he's their gateway.
Sure.
Gateway is a word I'm going to use a lot on today's podcast.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that.
But Tarantino, I think for most people was the gateway to independent movies, even if you're not a Tarantino guy, even if you don't like violence. I think for a lot of people, because I remember like my parents' friends, so people who are my age now or older, kind of seeking out independent movies just because they knew, and they never verbalized it this way, just because they wanted something different. And what was so great is that in the 90s, Hollywood movies were great. Tentpole, I mean, there were shitty movies, and there are always going to be shitty movies. And I'd even argue that in the 90s, we'll get there on this podcast kind of toward the end of it, I would argue that the bad movies in the 90s, like your Batmans and Robins, were worse than the bad movies now because they were like bigger swings.
I like Batman and Robin. But...
Oh, do you? Oh. Okay. Well,
don't get him started on Batman and Robin, please.
That may be another podcast.
I've had to sit through hours of this, Ed.
Okay. Well, I love the take. We'll leave the take there.
You don't love the take. But
okay. but you know what I mean? I feel like they're always going to be bad movies, but I feel like the bad movies now aren't so much bad; they're just generic.
I totally agree with you.
And they're not interesting enough to be bad.
I'm thrilled at this word that you've introduced, which is the gateway, because like this year, I think you're right. Like to me, now that I look back on it, and I have this huge list of the movies that I watched and loved.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit off topic of like just zeroing in on one best picture, but
the whole year is what we're talking about.
Well, we should talk. Yeah, let's talk about it as a group, because like I was like, oh, 1986. I was too young, obviously, and Tarantino was my guy in the 90s that triggered it. But I was looking at this list of movies and experiencing it like the heyday of my cinema love, and all the stuff that I hadn't seen, these gaps I was filling, felt like the boom times to me. And I was like, the variety of studio and indie, it's all there. And foreign movies, it was all there. And I was just stunned to discover what a rich year it was, when my impression of the 80s, really, even now, on a sort of abstract, like if I think, oh, the 80s, I'm sort of like, okay, I know there's the action juggernauts, and I know there's kind of like drippy mainstream Hollywood movies.
Sure.
And it's all kind of safe and a little bit mundane. No, like if you just go 2 levels down, it's not at all. It's fucking awesome.
I want to transition to Platoon, but I want to say, kind of to transition us to it, is that we're recording this, a couple of days, something that's on everybody's mind, that the Paramount won the battle to absorb Warner Brothers, and we're all concerned about this because my friend Joe Russo, who was the first guest on this podcast and is on a 1981er, which I don't know, it might be after this. So he's been on this show twice, and he made a video last night talking about how the problem with Paramount winning as opposed to Netflix winning is that Paramount has their own IP, and now they have to manage all of Warner Brothers IP, and there's zero chance that anything original is going to come out of that studio, or at least that's the fear. So, original movies, it's an endangered species.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to be a doomsayer, but anyway, let's talk about.
Well, can we talk about 80s with that idea? Because to me it seems like you can put culture to one side for a second and just talk about the economics, the expertise of filmmaking. It's all kind of colliding here in sort of a modern way, and you're seeing different techniques kind of come to fruition.
Yeah.
Here, and that's why I think it feels a little bit like a golden age, or at least it did to me.
No, I agree.
They're like, okay, there's this thing that Sean, I saw a Q&A once years ago with Sean Penn. And he said that, people forget that movies are a very sort of nascent art form. It took 200 years for novels to figure out what a novel was. It was epistolary, and then it became something else. Then there was interiority. And he's like, movies are still in the infancy. And I think we'll talk about this certainly with 1986. But the idea of what a movie is and what it can do was starting to take shape and take root in a way that was still experimental in places, but also it was like hitting a gear that was like, oh, this is what it can do. Okay, we get it. Let's make something with this. That felt awesome because you get that burst of creativity, but you get this sort of formal structure happening that feels really cohesive and good, even to a modern eye, I think.
Yeah. And with that, let's move on to Platoon with some trivia and some stats. So Oliver Stone wrote the first draft of this back in 1971, and he sent it to Jim Morrison, hoping he would play Charlie Sheen's part. And they found this script on Jim Morrison when he died.
Wow.
I mean, it was in that apartment he was in, which is crazy to think about. And of course, people who don't know, Oliver Stone went on to make a movie about the Doors a couple years after Platoon. So with this movie, Oliver Stone became the first Vietnam veteran to direct a major motion picture about the Vietnam War. He was already the first Vietnam veteran to win an Oscar because he won Best Screenplay for Midnight Express in 1978. And he became the first Vietnam vet to win an Oscar. As of 2016, I don't know if this is still current, he is the last veteran of any war to win an Oscar for Best Director, other than Clint Eastwood, who did serve in Korea, but he was never deployed. So he was in the army, but he did not actually serve in combat. So when they're cleaning, there's a scene pretty early on in the movie where they're cleaning the latrines, and you hear Good Morning Vietnam. You hear the real Adrian Cronauer, and people don't know Robin Williams the very next year was in a movie about that, and two people from this movie, Forrest Whitaker and Richard Edson, are also in Good Morning Vietnam. This I love, and this is something I knew, except I didn't know the exact number. This movie was shot in 54 days. Really quick. Wow. Oliver Stone shot quickly, regardless of the scale of the movie. He was very, very quick.
And that movie's on the move constantly. Yeah. That's crazy.
This blew my mind. I don't know if you guys knew this. This is like a real sliding doors to me. The part of Sergeant Barnes, which is the part that Berenger plays, was originally offered to Kevin Costner.
What?
And he turned it down because he didn't want to disrespect his brother, who was a Vietnam veteran. They would, of course, make a movie together, JFK, 5 years later. Can't quite imagine that, but I'm going to talk a lot about Oliver Stone and actors and performance, so would have been interesting. But I think it's a real sliding doors, because I think if Kevin Costner does this, he maybe doesn't do No Way Out and The Untouchables, but this is a hit also. It's a real what happens. At 2 hours, this is number 33 in ascending length of Best Pictures, number 34 if you count Sunrise, which we'll someday litigate if that even counts. It is number 39 on the box office list of Best Pictures with a worldwide gross of $138 million. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Platoon. I'm just going to kind of start here. We can take it wherever it needs to go. I'm going to start here with this question. A question I already kind of know the answer to. I wrote this down when I was watching it, and I already know that I'm wrong, but I want you guys to tell me how wrong I am. So I wrote this down. Again, I know this is wrong. I said, is this the first Roma Fableman's Almost Famous? Is this the first time a person's made a movie about their own story? I'd argue maybe Diner is, which is 4 years early.
Sure.
Can you guys think of an earlier version of a person making a movie, an autobiographical movie, but they'll change?
Besides our last podcast we did about Albert Brooks.
Well, but that's a little different. That's him. I mean, Albert Brooks isn't a movie editor. You know what I'm saying? Like, if Albert Brooks, I mean, yes, it's very nakedly confessional, that's a fair comment. But if Albert Brooks was playing a comedian like Albert Brooks, who was getting, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he were a film director, if he took it that's not bad. But do you think? But this is. I was in mind of Fableman's, because Fableman's is I'm a kid who likes to make movies, and my parents are divorced, and Almost Famous is like I'm 15 years old and I'm working for Rolling Stone. I mean, this is Oliver Stone's story. I mean, even to the point where Oliver Stone did get shot in the neck or got grazed. You know, he got a Purple Heart for the wound that we see. Chris, is that Charlie Sheen's name in this movie? Yeah, I think it's Chris. For the wound that we seen Charlie Sheen take very early on in the movie.
I'm sure there are other examples of this from earlier. I mean, like I was just looking up John Borman's Hope and Glory, which is his experience as a little boy. That's the next year in '87. But there have to be other sort of semi-autobiographical movies that I can't.
Maybe this is the most. Maybe this is the first really successful one.
I mean, I think that's the best. To just jump on that, I think it's the best thing about the movie is the unimpeachable like journalistic quality of this happened to me, and that you cannot. You can't escape how powerful that is, despite any other qualm you may have with the movie. I have a few, but like that makes it just sort of undeniable. It's like, well, nobody could have and nobody did make a movie this vivid and this personal and this real about the experience of being in Vietnam. So like,
and that's what Stone said when he made the movie or in the press. He said that he thought that Deer Hunter wins Best Picture 8 years earlier, and Apocalypse Now comes out the next year, both big hits, you know, but he said, I thought those movies were incredibly well made, but they just didn't reflect my experience. Now, Coppola and Cimino were not veterans, did not go to war. This is the first time that a guy who was on, and I agree with you, I think that's the thing about this movie that's the most effective is that, unimpeachable journalism is not something you could apply to any Oliver Stone movie, maybe except for this one. And that's not necessarily a knock on him, but you know, but I do feel like, but I think he fictionalizes it because I doubt he killed.
Well, it feels emotionally true. I mean, that was the thing that I mean, Vietnam had a big swing in our family. My grandfather was killed in Vietnam, and when my mom was 11, and so I grew up with it as a sort of specter in the house, and we didn't talk about it really. We didn't talk about anything except for glowing terms. I was telling Kalen this the other day that I was in college before I realized America lost the Vietnam War. I didn't know that. I went through all public school and then private school in Louisiana, and my family acted as if we won the war, that my grandfather's sacrifice was worth something.
Oh, really?
It was a big thing. And so when I sort of had this realization that the Vietnam story was more complicated than I had been taught or had thought, I just dove in. Tim O'Brien became my favorite author, The Things They Carried. And then I discovered this movie. And so I was like I was like a sponge for trying to understand what happened.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me not to see it through the eyes of like my family experience. Like what actually happened to him. I went back and read the Purple Heart notice that my grandfather got. And I was like, what actually happened? Because I was like becoming aware enough about misinformation or maybe glossing over certain details from government writing. And I was like, okay, it says he was killed by friendly fire. He'd been up for 72 hours. And I was like, oh, shoot, like what's going on here? And so when I watch movies like this and go back to rewatch Platoon, it's so hard for me not to like think about the scenarios that feel emotionally true if they're not actually true. And what I settled into was an emotional truth about my grandfather as opposed to a factual truth. The factual truth I'll never know. And if you guys haven't read The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, it's like the best. He says everything, I forget the exact phrase, but everything in this book happened even if it didn't literally happen.
Right.
And sometimes you have to fictionalize the truth to make it more true.
Yeah.
So that I think feels really, really acute for me in this movie because I don't know. It doesn't matter to me if the things actually happened to him in terms of journalism.
No.
Emotionally, they really it feels honest.
Well, he changes the character's name. I think he does that on purpose. I think he doesn't call the character Oliver Stone. Yeah. And also, I think he is still telling a story of, you know, I don't know that Barnes actually, he did say that Barnes and Elias were people that he knew. I don't know that Barnes killed Elias. I'm sure Barnes was the real Barnes. I'm saying was horrifically violent, and he just as a storyteller was like, okay, well, I still have to make a movie here. Yeah. I still need a black hat. I think
Yeah, no, Trev's right, and I mean that as well. It's like I don't mean that he's literally recording his literal day-to-day experience, but
Right.
the quality of
The details.
this is how it felt,
Yeah.
and this is how it looked, and this is how the relationships were.
Yeah.
Is just feels like, okay, well, that's true. I'm just going to accept that is true, mostly because it feels true and because I trust that I know this guy was there, and that seems to be the story that the movie is basically telling, which
Yeah.
is like, this is all basically true. These kinds of people were there.
Right.
These kinds of incidents happened.
Yeah.
This kind of abuse, this kind of terror. I also, just to say it, I love one of my favorite things in the whole movie is the idea that the Charlie Sheen character is this privileged kid who comes out here as a sense of duty or feels it's a sense of obligation, or he says like, I don't think, what's that line? He's like, I don't think it should be just poor kids. And they're like, that's the kind of thing only a rich kid could ever think.
That's
like,
what I wrote that down.
Line.
Wait,
yeah.
I actually wrote that down. You got to be rich in the first place to think like that.
Yeah, perfect.
It's great.
And that is Oliver Stone, because Oliver
Exactly.
Stone was kind of a rich kid. I don't know if he was like 1% wealth,
Yeah.
but he could have gotten out of the draft and like John Kerry himself.
Yeah.
Like similar thing.
And I think all that stuff is rendered just again, like, I don't know how to there's no criticism of it. It's just like, yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what it could be and should be. And Oliver Stone's he's a very naked filmmaker in a lot of ways, emotionally naked filmmaker.
Yeah.
He doesn't kind of ever hold back on that stuff.
Nothing subtle about Oliver Stone.
No. And my issue with the movie, especially, we don't need to transition this way, but like having watched Salvador of the same year, I was like, oh, the thing about this movie that actually kind of doesn't always work for me is that he is the sentimentality and the reflection quality of it, where I'm like, Salvador is a movie that, for all of its whatever flaws it may or may not have, I kind of prefer just on the filmmaking basis, because it's so aggressive and it's so vivid and so relentless, and it's kind of like wild Oliver Stoney kind of qualities, and Platoon pauses so frequently to have these sort of somber violins and slow motion and sentimental sadness about itself, and that sometimes I'm like, is that you now? That feels more like the way the world wants to interpret this story than the story being true. Which is, again, I don't know that that's a criticism, because he's making it about himself, making the movie on some level. But
I think Oliver Stone is a great interrogator and not a great moralist. And I think that when you look at Salvador, which I also watched for the first time in preparation for this, and loved it also, it's messier and it's grittier and it's trying to say less. I don't really, this is going to sound more dismissive than I mean it, but I don't really want to hear moral lessons from Oliver Stone. In the moments, the framing device of the movie, I don't really care for that much, but I love when it's gritty and when it's raw and feels emotionally true. I think in terms of an interrogator of human conditions, Oliver Stone is like almost non-paralleled. But in terms of a moralist, it's kind of simplistic for me, and I don't really need it, and it kind of turns me off a little bit.
Which is why I think it was the Best Picture winner. I mean, he nailed what the audience wanted from that Vietnam movie then. And I don't know that was calculated. I think it's probably just true to the movie he wanted to make, but I don't have any doubt that's why it was embraced so wholly when it's such a rough story.
It's interesting. Sorry to interrupt. It's interesting because looking at the Best Picture winners just of the 80s, having seen, well, all of them now, but just going chronologically, they seem to kind of, and I talked about this in the Gandhi episode, which was four episodes ago, or 4 Best Pictures ago. It seemed like in the 80s they were interested in 2 things, like really small domestic dramas, like Ordinary People, in terms of endearment, are very small, intimate, probably mid-budget. I mean, like modestly scaled movies. I'd say Chariots of Fire is somewhat in between. I thought Chariots of Fire was a more epic movie, having never seen it. And that movie's, despite being historical, is actually pretty intimate. It's actually just about relationships. But then you have things like Gandhi and Amadeus and Out of Africa, which are epic in scale. So they seem to be going almost every other year. They seem to be going between these 2 guardrails. And then we know what follows after this is The Last Emperor, which is huge. Rain Man, which again is more about relationships. And Drive Miss Daisy somewhat in between. I think what's interesting about Platoon is you said something, Kalen, that really is making me that I agree with, that because I always wonder about any Best Picture winner, is it Oscar bait-y? Did they make this with not the intention, but maybe the hope, or even the, well, maybe this could be an awards, like a studio would.
Sure.
Like maybe like the studio greenlights this movie because they say, oh, this could be an awards movie, and maybe that filters down to the music they choose and the sentimentality that you're talking about, which I agree. I think that's where this movie's at its weakest, when it's the most reflexive. 'Cause I think that's when the writing is most on its nose, and I think that's, and I also think Oliver Stone. I'm going to get to this more in just a little bit. I think Oliver Stone does a lot of these moves better, even 1 or 2 movies down the line.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's
yeah.
a stretch coming after this where he's making the best movies of his career, and I would rank Platoon at the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Not saying it's bad.
No, I
But-
agree with you completely. I mean,
Yeah.
when I think of him as an exciting filmmaker, he's like the movies of his that I love, and he's so talented and was at such a peak of powers in his talents that even when he makes something as fucking bizarre as JFK, they still nominate it because they're like, this movie, you can't fight it. It's too fucking crazy and too awesome.
Yeah.
But Platoon, I mean, to me, I always think about it this way, and this is not my insight, but it's like every time you look at a batch of Best Picture movies, and especially the winners, it's just what story did they want to tell about themselves? And they being purely the Hollywood elite. It's just that. That's it.
Yeah.
And so when you think about, okay, what stories do they want to tell? Epics are always going to be on the list.
Sure.
And the kind of like, we feel bads are always going to be on the list.
Yeah.
We feel bad about what happened in Vietnam. Well, no shit.
Yeah.
Like, so who doesn't?
Your Green
and
Books.
so when they see,
Green Book, we
when
solve
you see-
racism. Absolutely.
Exactly. Driving Miss Daisy falls into that. Like, and then it's often paired with a counter, which is, what story don't we want to tell about ourselves? What story? And when I look at this sort of list of movies I made, what I think are actually the great enduring films of that year, Hollywood doesn't want you to know that shit. They don't want it. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And those movies are the ones that tell a truer story about the culture. And like I watched a lot of like Siskel and Ebert talking about the best of the 80s. Yeah, they talked about the best of the 86.
Yeah.
Their favorites and their least favorites of the year. And one really stuck out to me, and this is a slight detour, but they were talking about Hannah and her sisters. And they were saying like, oh, it's so us. If fucking aliens from the future want to know what it was like to live in 1986, watch Hannah and her sisters, and that's our life. And then, Pauline Kael writes like, of course critics want to be the fucking characters in Hannah and her sisters. And the whole world of this sort of elite Hollywood people are like, yes, that's a portrait of us. Beautiful.
Right.
We're so funny and we're so smart and we have all these friends and
And foibles and cute cheating foibles.
And I think of it similar, like, of course that didn't win, because Platoon was a story they wanted to tell more. But but those are all of a ilk to me. It's just when you put it as just who do they want to be, those movies are that.
Yeah.
I think that's right. In response to your other question, Oscarbation is never a term I've never heard, and I will continue to now use. Thank you for that.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was not mine. I believe
I will credit you with it.
Actually, I'll credit Mike Prince. Michael
it's
Prince,
yours.
who has been a guest on this show, but I don't know if he invented it, but he's one who introduced it to me.
Well,
so.
from now on, it's going to be credited to you.
All right.
Going forward.
I tried Prince.
I
I sourced you.
And disregarded. No, to me, not knowing the answer to this question, I really think that it feels like there's a messy movie in Salvador, and it feels like the swing at art. It feels like the swing at putting a bow on this, and it feels honest in terms of his attempts. I just don't think he's that necessarily good at it or that deep thinking about those emotional issues in that specific structural
You talking about
way.
Salvador?
No, I'm talking about Platoon.
Platoon. Got it.
Yeah. Salvador is the sort of counterpoint to that, I think, because you can kind of see both sides of what he's up to. I don't think that's an award swing as much as it is, and I may be fully wrong about this, but it feels like an earnest, honest effort to take a story about good and evil in terms of these two alternate father figures that he can do. And part of that isn't it like, let's talk about the loss of innocence and all those types of things. It feels like it's an attempt at wrestling this story into what he considers palatable or true package.
Right.
So I don't think it's a...
Well, I would kill to see, he's talking about sliding doors, not just the Jim Morrison, but any version of this movie he makes in 71. I want to watch that. I want to know what he made.
I don't know that he would have enough distance for it, because I think...
But that's good. That's why I want to see it.
Yeah, but keeping in mind where Oliver Stone is at this point, so Oliver Stone, is a very well-respected screenwriter. He wins the Oscar for Midnight Express. He writes Scarface. He writes Conan the Barbarian, or at least he writes on them. He writes Year of the Dragon. And as a director, he kind of can't get it going. Salvador is his first significant movie as a director, but it comes out the same year. I think it might, so that's, again, him shooting quickly, because it isn't like Salvador was a long production. Have you guys read Oliver Stone's memoir that he wrote?
I would love to.
It's what's interesting about it, because I'm not really a fan of Oliver Stone currently. I don't think I've seen the last 4-6 of his movies, but
He hasn't made one in like a decade or more.
I don't know. Yeah, but the last couple, I will talk a lot about Oliver Stone, obviously, because he's the man who directed this movie. But what's interesting is that his memoir ends with him winning the Oscar for Platoon.
Oh, wow.
So he goes into a lot of depth about this movie and about Salvador, and about it's
interesting.
fantastically
Awesome.
well written, and he's still sharp as a tack. He's not even that old a man. Well, I guess he's almost 80. But what I'm saying is I highly recommend reading it because it elucidates a lot about this movie in particular. Because my thing is that, like, okay, but I want to see the book that starts with Wall Street and goes through like your bangers.
For sure.
Hopefully he's somewhere writing that. But yeah, let's talk about the movie. I think what's great about this movie, and I think you were touching on this, Kalen, is I'm just gonna call it perhaps reductively the process, the details, like just the fact that, you know, it's very effective. The opening scene where Sheen gets off the transport plane and all the body bags laid down, which you could argue is on the nose, but I'm like, that's definitely how it
Sure,
happened.
that doesn't
Those
bother
planes
me.
are going back on the, you know, so it's like it's not a stretch, but. So obviously they're in a very dangerous place in terms of just being killed, but also just the physical elements of where they are, like the bugs crawling on his neck and just the snakes slithering through there. It's just like they're in the jungle.
Yeah.
And if you look at a movie I love, Bridge of the River Kwai, which is a Best Picture winner and one I absolutely love, and we're going to cover on this show eventually, which is also in the jungle. It's a different part of Asia, but it's a more, I won't say romanticized. They don't get into just. They get into a little bit the heat, but they don't get into just the hellscape of just the insects and just the.
It's almost a wider lens movie, just all across the board.
Yeah.
Like not just like literally wider lenses, but it does feel that way. Where Oliver Stone is less interested in that. He's like, this is an emotional, personal experience. I'm going to show you personally how this felt.
Exactly.
And you do feel it. You do feel it watching it.
Because it's almost like a horror movie in the sense that because what's this movie is very. And I think this is to its strength, very episodic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very like we went on this and then this happened and then we went on this hump and then this happened. And there isn't a lot of plot, nor do I think there should be. There is an overarching story of, okay, there's Elias's guys and then there's Barnes' guys and, you know, these are the good guys and the bad guys. Yeah. And, you know, where do I fit in? And okay, I'm going to hang out with these people. But I think he does show you sort of the day in the life. It almost reminded me, tonally it's different, but like what I think everybody's favorite section of Goodfellas is like that last half hour where it's like, you know, it's so granular. Yeah. Like I'm going to get the silencers, I'm going to pick up the cocaine and all that other stuff. It's like, this is the last day of a gangster's life to the time where they're time stamping it. Yeah. This movie doesn't have that same energy, but it is this granular where it's like, this is what it's like. And even, you know, when you were drafted, you had to serve a year. And I really liked how, and I didn't remember this because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time. I really liked how the guys were talking about, oh, I just got under 100. Oh, I got 30 days left. They talk about being short. I got 30 days left. And just like, it's like to us, a year doesn't seem like a long time, but when every day is like the one day we see Charlie Sheen or 1 or 2 days we see in the beginning, it's like, yeah, that would feel like 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, when you could die, I don't know. I just love that idea of, and this came up in Hurt Locker as well, because in Hurt Locker they actually take you through the amount of days left on the tour, but even Hurt Locker, I think it's the difference between that war and this war, isn't as elementally dangerous. They're in Iraq, which is dangerous, but they're not dealing with the insects and just the elements.
Fear around every corner. Like,
yeah.
I like the episodic nature of it. And I think it's actually a really smart way to approach this. I mean, again, Tim O'Brien does the same thing with his chapter breaks, but you're looking at something that is chaotic and completely not understandable. And almost for a viewer, you're like, okay, well, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And now they're back here and okay, good. Like there is a very clear sense of resetting in the movie.
Yeah, when they're in the barracks, they're safe.
Yeah,
at least in this movie.
Yeah, when they're doing at the first big chunk, they go back, they're cleaning latrines. You're like, okay, I guess they're safe now, and I can kind of reset as an audience member. So forget storytelling. Just as an audience member, I really appreciated that modular nature because I was able to like, okay, take a breath, reset. Okay, what happens next? It's all still chaotic, but it feels structured in time.
Well, and I love the feeling that any time somebody could sort of say we're going to go out there, like there's a constant tension to in an experiential way that like you like know how it would feel to be told at any given moment, all right, time to go out there. And I loved in the movie
that isn't treated with thunderous shock. It's like, okay, there's going to be a period where they kind of try to negotiate their way out of it, where they all kind of like, they all are sort of like, dude, you know, I just did this. Can I just like not? Like, can we just like avoid this one, or do we have to do this? That I think just feels like the way a human being would behave in that scenario, in a very realistic and very sort of mundane kind of way, until suddenly you're back out there and it's a horror film. I mean, I think that's
a lot. It's a lot of tension, especially the first. So the thing that's stuck in mind, I think it's Chris's first or second night in country, and where he has to stay up, and it's at night. I think it's the first night he's there. Maybe it's the second night. It's very early, meaning early in his tour. And he gets, you know, he's supposed to set up those mines or those booby traps or whatever, and then he gets shot, which Oliver Stone did. I guess he catches a fragment and he's screaming, or somebody's screaming. I forget. Maybe you guys can help me remember this because I watched it a couple weeks ago. I wrote down "take the pain." One of the medics is like, "Take the pain."
It's like, shut up.
Is that what Berenger says, or is that what a medic says? I don't know if he says. Someone says the Charlie Sheen. It doesn't really matter who says it, but like I wrote down "take the pain," and I think that's not an accident. I think that's like Stone is not subtle. In good ways and bad.
And if I remember, that injury is like way worse than shrapnel. Like they get his arm blown off or something, and he's
that happens later. So the guy I'll go right to that. So there's a character who picks up a booby trap and his arms get blown off, which I did not remember.
So fucked.
But what's interesting about that, and a moment, it's interesting because I remember the Tom Berenger character in this being just evil, which I believe he is. But there was, to Oliver Stone and Tom Berenger's credit, so when that guy gets killed, there is a moment where Tom Berenger thinks he's alone and Sheen sees him and he's like crying or he's weeping. I was like, I did not remember that. I did not remember that they gave this guy a shred of humanity. And I'm so glad that they did, because
it's super helpful. And going back to that previous scene, it's so funny because what I remember about that scene, and I remember the beats of that, but what I remember, my emotional takeaway from that scene where he gets shot in the neck, is there's a guy next to him who is gonna die. His arm is blown off, his guts are out, whatever it is, and he's holding his neck and saying, "Don't lie to me. How bad is it? Am I gonna survive?" And they're like, "You're fine, dude. You're fine." Like I took that as a totally different sort of emotional takeaway from that scene. Not that he was take the pain. I think the other guy.
take the pain. I think I had that wrong. I think
it's about the other guy.
The other guy who's dying.
Meanwhile, Charlie Sheen is like, you know, am I gonna make it? And they're like, what are you talking about?
It's a scratch.
Which is funny. Which is a great little beat,
Somebody says something like, do I have it here? That like, you want to get killed early. You know,
if you're gonna get killed,
you want to get killed early. You know, which I thought was
good point.
I do think that your point about humanity though is strong. Is like that I didn't. If you were ever in danger of feeling that Berenger becomes sort of a cartoony villain, Oliver Stone has a number of ways of taking care of that. He makes him both. Humanizes him emotionally, but I also just believe the things that he is saying. That he believes them, and that he believes them as a person would, not as a monster would.
Well, let me throw this out. It's a little broad, but I'm going to tie it to Platoon. Not broad. It is about Oliver Stone, and I've said this for a long time, and I maintain, at least from Salvador through JF, maybe even beyond. I'd say from Salvador on to, you know, for a while. I think that Oliver Stone, putting aside the methods by which he did this, got the best performances of any director, save for Sidney Lumet, who I think was the very best. I think Oliver Stone, because Michael Douglas said this great thing. Michael Douglas did not have an easy time with him on Wall Street, famously, during the shoot. But Michael Douglas said this great thing, which I agree with. He said that, you know, if you look at Oliver's movies, if you look at James Woods in Salvador, Tom Cruise in Born on the 4th of July, or Kevin Costner in JFK, these guys are doing the best work of their careers, and it's because of Oliver Stone. And I don't have any stories. I mean, I know he put them, I think it was the first movie where actors were put through boot camp. Dale Dye's in this movie. He's an actor in this movie. It's crazy he doesn't have white hair. But Dale Dye was a Vietnam veteran. I believe he was a captain, and this was the first time, I believe, where actors had to go to boot camp. And Dale Dye trained Spielberg's guys for Private Ryan, and I think everything in between. But I think that sticking with Willem Dafoe and Tom Berenger, I think their performances are so incredibly strong in this. They're both Oscar nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Probably split the vote, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
We'll get to it.
We can get to that. I have a whole thing about vote splitting on this show that
Okay.
I don't believe that actually happens.
Oh, all right.
I'm a vote splitter denier.
Disagree.
Yeah,
Go on.
I'm a vote splitter, but they're both terrific in this movie. And let's start with that. I mean, Berenger had been in Big Chill. I think Berenger, prior and after this, was sort of a, was a leading man, but wasn't A-list. And I think this was really casting against type for him. Dafoe had just done To Live and Die in L.A. I don't know how big a hit that was, but he's the villain in that.
Yeah.
Because of the way Dafoe looks, I
Yeah.
think he's typically cast as a creepy villain. But they're kind of flipped in this, even though they're very early in their careers. Like, Dafoe's the good guy and Berenger's the bad guy. And I think it's really effective. And I think Stone was really good at recognizing, almost against type, because even Michael Douglas in Wall Street was against type. You don't think of it that way now. Michael Douglas was like sort of a B-grade Harrison Ford.
Yeah, yeah,
He'd
yeah.
done Fatal Attraction that hadn't come out yet, and Oliver Stone was like, no, I want to cast this guy as like evil.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think he had an incredible eye for casting, and I think that this is, I don't want to say the first, because James Woods in Salvador, James Woods is Oscar nominated the same year for Salvador,
Yeah.
and I think the script's nominated also. So Stone is nominated for screenplay. I guess that might be an adapted. But yeah, I guess my question is, I think Berenger and Dafoe are so incredibly strong in this, and I think the movie obviously doesn't work without that dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think they're great. I think all the performances are pretty incredible, even down to the sort of background characters. There's a whole host of amazing actors in this movie who are just doing great work throughout. And watching it, I got to watch it twice because I'd watched it the first time we were going to record. Spoiler alert. And then I watched again just to refresh myself on it, and like it just allowing myself to sort of pay attention to sort of the work being done in the background or on the fringes of the frames.
Yeah.
Incredible. Like, he's getting great performances out of everybody. I do think that Tom Berenger and Willem Dafoe are just fucking awesome in this movie. They're really fucking awesome in this movie. Yeah. And I think this is the first time I saw, I don't know if this is true, but like using Willem Dafoe's face as a beatific sort of angel face as opposed to a horror face is a great idea. And totally effective.
Yeah, that guy should play Jesus.
He should basically play Jesus, is what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know if you know this. So apparently he had, I don't know if improvised, but it was his idea when he's killed, he threw his arms back like that, and that's the poster of the movie.
Yeah.
The poster of the movie, I think it might be silhouetted, I don't know, but it's him dying, and that's how effective a choice that was, because he just did it. I mean, I don't know, maybe he told Oliver Stone, hey, I'm going to do this, but that wasn't scripted, like the pose he was in. And I think Dafoe, and both Berenger and Dafoe pop up briefly in Born on the 4th of July, not accidentally, which is Stone's next Vietnam movie, which we'll talk about briefly soon. Charlie Sheen's very good in this movie. It's I think, I have some complicated feelings about Charlie Sheen, but I think all the actors, I think all the actors to your point, I won't go so far as to say it feels like they're in a war, but I think because they were in the Philippines, it was hot, they were at least trained to go on these sort of humps and live, you see it on their face. I don't think they had to do a lot of acting to be, because I heard that Oliver Stone talked about in his book how like Charlie Sheen got like concussions on his eardrums just from all the like they were, obviously they weren't in the danger of being murdered like a soldier would be, but elementally I think he did replicate the experience that he went through. And I think that's the kind of director he is, which is I'm not always a fan of. Some people have
He's very immersive.
He's very immersive, and I think you see it, particularly on Sheen, who is our hero. You just see it like, oh, he looks like he hasn't slept, which he always kind of looks like, but this is not, But it looks like this kid is, again, just the physical toll of just being in this place and going through the jungle before you even get shot at, which would be hell.
This may be wrong, but I felt, and I was happy to feel, that Charlie Sheen is almost a blank slate kind of cipher. Like, he's not doing a lot,
I agree.
which I really wanted from him. And
I completely agree.
Underplaying this and not letting us think about, I almost didn't think about what he was going through. It's so weird because I was so in the point of view of that character that I was looking at everything around him, experiencing through him, which is a great sort of place for that character to be. I think I didn't really watch Charlie Sheen as much as I experienced through Charlie Sheen.
I completely agree. That's very well said.
Well, and I think that that's also because the narrative of the whole movie of Platoon, and I don't know about the marketing of it, but certainly the story is this is Oliver Stone.
Yeah,
and so
sure.
you just are like, okay, I know who he becomes, and I know that he makes this movie, and I know I am seeing this sort of Moby Dick style through his eyes, and that's where I'm investing my thing, which again, to me, I have a little bit of it's not a problem, it's a stupid thing, but it's like, that reflection in the movie is something that I just wish that didn't sometimes overpower what I think would be more effective as an immersive sort of experience. That's not to say that the blank slate is bad, but Charlie Sheen, I mean, look, he's better in Ferris Bueller than he is in Platoon. So he's good and he's great and he does his job. I'm just not sure I love what that job needs to be.
Yeah,
for
he's
that
not
movie.
good. He's effective.
Yeah,
Is what I would say.
yeah.
I think that's a much better way to put it. Well, let's talk about this. I think you're kind of dancing around it. Do you guys think, we're all writers here, does the voiceover work? Is it necessary?
Well, it's an okay idea. I don't know that I think that any voiceover in this movie would be wrong. It's fascinating the way it sort of calls back to Apocalypse Now, which is Dad obviously was like the lead-in doing voice work and sets up the greatest joke in Hot Shots Part 2 in the world. But I
love that joke.
So you need the voiceover if you're going to make that joke.
If only for the parody movie that comes out 7 years later.
Yeah.
That is my favorite. That is, for the record, I want to be very clear. That's my favorite joke in that movie.
It's
also
amazing. It's amazing. It's a
If
classic.
you don't know
joke.
what we're talking about, I don't even want to say what's a YouTube because that would give the joke away.
Yeah. Well, it's perfect. It's just everything about it is perfectly done.
Yes.
And the punchline of it, which I guess we won't give up.
Yeah,
We'll
because
give away
that's
on
another
Genius.
Oliver Stone connection there. But if you know what we're talking about, you're laughing. If you don't,
Yeah, go watch it.
go watch Hard. There's one joke in this movie that's probably 85 minutes soaking wet that makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
It's nothing what you expect to hear on an Oscar podcast. There's a lot of references to Hot Shots Part 2.
Well,
there
I mean,
should be more.
yeah, we go where it
We
takes
go
us.
where we go, baby.
Yeah, what do you have any thoughts on the voiceover? Yeah, Renee?
I agree with Kalen that I can kind of take or leave it. I'd like to see it tried without it. I just think I think there's a conversation with Apocalypse Now that's interesting that's happening. It almost feels like a way to corral it, and I don't need this movie to be corralled.
Yeah.
So I think that my instinct would be to say I don't like it, but it's a soft dislike.
I actually think that's exactly where I am. It's a soft dislike. It's like it's not necessary. It's not overly intrusive, and it's not a ton of it.
There's not a ton
I feel
of
like it's pretty sparing. Like
Yeah.
maybe he has it in like 6 or 8 places in the 2 hours.
Yeah.
So if he were a friend of mine, he would show me like a friends and family cut. I'd be like, let me just see
Let's
what
see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet the movie would survive without it. I think that's not a studio pressure. I think that's his instinct as a filmmaker to over-explain things. Even in his...
I just think that all these I know I keep sort of saying this and I maybe keep just saying it in repetitive or different ways, but like I think the movie, its central concept or its central like core idea is confused because like the voiceover speaks to his morality. Am I going to lose my soul out here? Am I going to become this evil version, or am I going to sort of back this good guy? And am I going to lose it? Basically, am I going to lose it? And you know, the sort of pseudo My scene is like all about that, and that's it. But the framing of the film, the first quote is like basically, you know, a lot of young men were lost out there. We lost a lot of young men out there, and I don't think it really means morally. I think it really means like they all died. And then the slow-mo and strings are about the loss of bodies, the loss of individual lives that could have gone on to flourish and be great, or maybe went on and came home damaged. Like it's all reflective. So those two things just seem somewhat incompatible to me.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of when I think about the elements, those sort of external elements, it's like I'm like I just don't really sometimes know what the best version of this movie is or would be.
It feels a little I don't want to say unfocused because I love how sort of tight lengthwise this movie is. This movie does win the Oscar for editing, and we'll litigate that in a little bit later in the show.
Aliens.
But what's that?
Aliens.
Yeah. I watched that last night again.
Okay, well, Kalen sipped his hand. But anyway,
That's just editing.
Yeah.
but
The
anyway,
best editing.
but yeah, I think I definitely agree with you because I think that I mean the VO again doesn't take me out. It's sort of slight enough that it doesn't really. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, it's like sort of it's a mild flavor in this movie. Whereas in Apocalypse Now, Apocalypse Now is more lyrical and and he's going to different worlds in that movie. He's encountering different people.
Yes. Okay. Great. It's essential to Apocalypse Now.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's no
it's
doubt.
essential, and I think unto itself the narration's better written.
Yes.
Because the Apocalypse Now narration was written by Michael Hare, who himself was a Vietnam veteran and who co-writes Full Metal Jacket with Kubrick, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, at least tangentially. So it's. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the quotable lines from Apocalypse Now are from the narration.
Right,
Not the most quotable line, of course. R.I.P. Robert Duvall. But I think that there's something a little slightly off in the mixture of this.
Yeah.
But I do think it comes from this place, which you kind of open with, Kalen. It just comes from this very real place of this is what it was like for me, so I don't necessarily hold it against the movie.
I don't either. It's a great, and let's keep emphasizing that, because it's like I'm like you. It sounds like a huge fan of Oliver Stone at his peak.
Yes.
And this feels like him to me. Like it's like I love this guy, and I love the way he makes movies, and I love how open and in many ways sort of unabashedly honest he is about those things. In this case, how could you expect him to have a great deal of laser objectivity about a message he's conveying? This is all confused.
Yeah, it's this. Yeah. This is. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say this is his most personal movie. I mean, because how it would have to be. I think he has a personal connection to all his movies. Yeah. Obviously, from the research, he obviously has a huge connection to Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
So The Doors is personal to him in that regard.
Well, and I'd like to suspect. I mean, I don't know. Really, I've never observed Oliver Stone for a great deal of time other than behind the scenes stuff on set, but like it feels like the reason he gets great performances is because these movies matter to him.
Oh yeah.
And they are deeply passionate, and he is going to insist that it be his way, and an actor is going to participate in realizing that, and they are going to give the best version of themselves to achieve it. He's very inspirational in that way.
And what's interesting about Oliver Stone, which I find so fascinating, is that he's doing, because I mentioned he shot this in 54 days. All of his movies are shot quickly, regardless of the scale. Like he was for a while doing almost 2 movies a year. Like as a movies, like for instance, so this comes out, and then a year later, Wall Street comes out. A year later, Talk Radio comes out. A year later, Born on the 4th of July comes out.
Yeah.
18 months later, no, like 12, like a little over a year later, The Doors comes out. 6 months after that, JFK comes out. These are all period pieces, not Wall Street, but these are period pieces. I mean, JFK, just going with that example, the fact that he shot that in like 3-4 months, and that movie is a period piece with the biggest cast he's ever worked with.
Edward, did you see Salvador? Like how they produced that movie is inexplicable to me.
Right.
Like it's fucking crazy. And
but he had to move quickly because he didn't have the resources, and it's almost like
you would never know that it is the
Yeah.
biggest, like the number of extras they have, swarming,
the humanity
like
in
these
it. Yeah,
I couldn't believe
riots
it. I actually
like,
called my partner and I was like, "Can you look at this scene? There's like 1 billion people in this shot."
How the fuck
and
did
how
they do
that
that? And he
happened.
is right. I mean, he's obviously just like kind of mimicking Costa Gavras here, but like he's just running around filming this shit.
Yeah.
That is, he's just creating as
It
real
feels
full spectacle. Like
so
there's
free.
no stopping whatever is going on
Yeah,
here. And
let's
he's
just get it.
shooting
Yeah, it's gonna
all.
happen once. Let's just get it.
Crazy.
we should talk it because you kind of just took me there. We should talk about what I think is a key collaborator with Oliver Stone, which is his DP Robert Richardson.
Yeah.
Mhm.
People don't know. You could see Robert Richardson grow and Oliver Stone growing with him. I
Definitely.
don't know what Robert Richardson did shoot Platoons. Robert Richardson shot every Stone movie from Platoon through U-Turn. I don't know what the break was, but Robert Richardson, people don't know, and you guys can disagree with this take I'm about to spit out. I think he's the only auteur DP that I could think of where he shot it regardless of who the director is. He goes on to shoot for Scorsese and Tarantino and big directors after he and Oliver. I don't know why he and Oliver Stone broke ties, but after, even concurrent to working with Oliver Stone, he starts to work for those directors that I just mentioned.
Yep.
And you can see even in things that Robert Richardson, like, I don't know if you guys were West Wing fans, but The West Wing looks like Robert Richardson shot it. Just the way they walk through hallways and those white shafts of light that seem to come from nowhere. He was not involved in that show, but they looked at whoever the DP of that show was, said, I want this to have like it's the White House. I want it to have like this urgent feel. And Robert Richardson, at least for the famous walk and talks in the West Wing, through the corridors of the West Wing. So I think Robert Richardson is the key collaborator in this golden age of Oliver Stone movies, which is what we're talking about. This pretty much this decade.
Yeah.
86 to 97, a little more than a decade. And then Oliver Stone, I'm not saying the movies aren't well shot after that, but I think that I just kind of want to shout him out. And there's one shot in this movie, and this movie looks great throughout. It's fairly naturalistic. There's one shot though. I don't know if you guys remember this. Well, I don't know if you guys. I'm sure you remember it. There's a scene where Tom Berenger is on like a ridge, and there's a guy running, and he turns around and he shoots the guy, and it's just so perfectly timed. And it's just for some reason it was just like I just thought that was so perfectly staged. I mean, there's some imagery in this movie that has stuck with me, but I think if you were to look at just the cinematography, and again, he does a great job here but I think you see it even in the next movie, even in Wall Street, you just see a much more muscular look.
Oh yeah,
a much more
oh my
from
God.
both
what,
of them.
What that became, what they started to develop together, is just like you're right. It's iconic. It's totally iconic.
And the fact that you can work for, I think Richardson has a way to sort of like get these big directors to sort of not bend to his will, but to kind of like come over to him. Whereas you look at other DPs like Harris Savides, who died a few years ago.
Yeah.
You know, he shot a lot of Gus Van Sant stuff, but he shot 2 Fincher movies. Those are 2 very different directors with very and a DP should be able to meld. Where Richardson's like, no, we're gonna do it my way, but.
You could probably make the case that Deakins is as iconic,
I agree.
but otherwise,
but Deakins, I think, Deakins is in a class by himself. But I'm saying when Richardson started to shoot the Tarantino movies, you saw a huge, like the way that Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs look, and they're not badly shot at all, but once he hooks up with Robert Richardson, you see a huge difference
which
in
is
Tarantino's movies.
Which I've always found hilarious because Tarantino claims to have never watched Natural Born Killers, and to adopt because it was such a betrayal of his voice and his idea and his intent, and then to watch him sort of borrow or utilize the aesthetic forged so heavily on that movie and the others around it for his own, for Kill Bill and for especially in Hateful Eight and all the stuff that he wrote. It was just like, it's just always so funny to me that it's like, something came out of that. Because like you have a lot to thank Oliver Stone for getting this look.
Yeah, he said that he's made up a lot with Oliver Stone since then.
Well, good.
Have you guys read? It's a little bit off topic. I think it's called Killer Instinct by Jane Hampshire.
I don't think so.
Highly recommend it. So Jane Hampshire produced Natural Born Killers, and it's like the
Right.
whole story of what happened.
And
I don't know how great Tarantino comes off in that book, but I don't know how great Oliver Stone comes off in that book. But it's very cool. I don't know what else she's done. She was the co-producer of, I think her partner name was like Don Murphy, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's all about the making of Natural Born Killers, a movie I don't like, by the way, but is interesting, and I know some people like it. So you had mentioned
it's almost as good as Batman and Robin.
I have a story about Oliver Stone.
Please.
Kalen said he was inspirational, and I was like, well, that's not my experience with Oliver Stone.
There was a time.
There was a time. Yeah. So I was on this, I'll say what I can about this, but I was on a show. It was a documentary show about summer school. And the premise of the show, it's a real reality. The premise of the show was kids who were having a hard time in school were failing out, 9th, 10th graders mostly. They would go to a accredited summer school with celebrity teachers. That was the show. So like 50 Cent taught homeroom, David Arquette was a mentor, Susie Orman taught finance, Jesse Jackson taught civil rights, and Oliver Stone taught history.
Oh, wow.
So I was in the room for all of these lessons. So I got to sit there and shoot all of these lessons that they would do. And it was a real school. And some of it made air, but a lot of it was just honest lessons. And they would get real credit. That was with LAUSD.
Oh, wow.
So Oliver Stone's first, Oliver Stone didn't last long on this show. So Oliver Stone.
This is, by the way, just brace yourself. It's the greatest story Travis has ever told me.
So I'm in, I think I call Kalen right after this happened because I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened to me. So I'm in the room watching this, and it's right after lunch. These kids a lot of them just have very poor reading skills. They've been failing out of high school. Oliver Stone had just written this big book about Vietnam, and he comes in. And it's just after lunch. It's hot. It's a dark room. Oliver Stone is very schlubbily dressed. He kind of shuffles into the room, puts this massive Vietnam book on the table, and he says, we're going to talk about Vietnam today. And he says, okay, so some table setting. Who here can tell me who the U.S. president was when that first started putting troops into Vietnam as advisors? These kids have never heard of Vietnam. Like, they don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
And he goes, I like Ike. And then they look at him like he's insane. It's quiet. And he goes, Ike? Dwight D. Eisenhower? And all the kids are like, okay, shrug, I guess. Okay, guy. He goes, okay, well, okay. So keep in mind, they don't know the U.S. president. So then his next question is, and who was in charge of the North Vietnamese during this time? And it's silence. God. And he goes, they called him Uncle Ho. And now the kids are paying attention. And then someone goes, Ho. And he goes, Ho Chi Minh. And one of the kids goes, his name was Hoochie Man? And then all the kids start chanting, Hoochie Man. And then Oliver Stone just physically crumbles and he looks exhausted. And he sits down and asks for a break and then didn't come back.
Oh my God.
It was great. Hoochie Man.
He made it a year in Vietnam. He couldn't make it 10 minutes.
Dude, I've never seen someone so demoralized by a teaching attempt in my life.
The vision of poor Oliver Stone up there being like, I got this.
I can do this.
I'm going to bring this
to
life. I'm a world-class
teacher.
storyteller.
I'm a world-class teacher. They didn't know who Oliver Stone was, of course. So, like, who is this old schlubby guy, unkempt eyebrow guy coming in?
I don't think Oliver took the temperature of the room.
He didn't. It was a disaster. He wouldn't have calibrated if they hadn't chanted him down with the words Hoochie Man. Like, he wouldn't have ever calibrated. It would have been 3 hours of that. It just would have been until he was like, well, this isn't working.
I'm glad I didn't know this story as I watched Platoon for this podcast because it might have taken me out of it. Here's a world's worst segue. Sticking with the idea, or going back to the idea of, is this movie is Oliver Stone's experience. He had said in an interview that he acted terribly, and there's a scene in this movie where Charlie Sheen is shooting at the guy's feet, and I give him a lot of credit because you had said that Charlie Sheen isn't so much a character as sort of like this vessel we experience people from. And I think that that's true, except for the very end, which we'll get to. And also I think in this scene, the fact that this kid, we see this kid lose his mind. And he doesn't kill the guy, but it's still pretty horrible. And then, he kind of stops and sees what he's doing. But I guess I have to give Oliver Stone credit for portraying this horrible thing that he's depicting.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Totally.
I mean, that's not something you would see. I mean, it doesn't apply to the Fabelmans and Almost Famous or anything like that. But I think there's a very admirable lack of vanity to put that, to give your character, your avatar, because what Kevin Dillon does after is obviously this horrific murder and
well, that's what I was about to say. I think that it is admirable, yes, but looking at the sort of different levers or motivators that are driving both those characters is extremely helpful to watch. Like Charlie Sheen is acting out of senseless rage. I don't understand anything. None of this fucking makes sense. I'm fucking furious. Yeah. It's this overboiling of raw emotion, and that's how he chooses to take it out. Doesn't know how else to do it. Kevin Dillon is a different type of character.
Right.
Who has different levers and motivators, and it's the sort of gleeful destruction of human life that he takes place in. But putting those side by side, I thought was incredibly powerful and really interesting.
Yeah, like how far are you going to go? And then a few minutes later, Sheen stops some soldiers from raping a woman or maybe even a young girl. What's interesting is he keeps her completely off camera. We don't see that's why I'm being sort of cagey about, is it a woman or a young girl?
I think he says it's a kid.
So it is like a little girl.
Yeah, I think so.
So and you could very callously call that a save the cat moment, but it doesn't feel, it feels like basic decency. It doesn't feel like this. I don't think he's trying to make Sheen like heroic. He's just sort of like what? Like, you're a fucking animal, man. What's wrong with you?
The fact that these scenes are close together is the point. I think it's just chaos. He's struggling to hold on to his morality, trying to make sense of any of this, and not like in a storytelling dictatorial way. It just feels like I don't know it's all moving so fast.
Yeah,
he's doing this one good thing, he's doing this one bad thing. It's all in this kerfuffle of like chaos, and I think that's and then culminating with the Elias Berenger standoff. It's great. It's a great little sequence.
This is where you see, because they actually throw down here. Like you see from the beginning, these guys don't like each other, but they're kind of like, okay, asshole, whatever. But this is where, if you're charting their relationship, because he's got Barnes has a gun to a little girl's head, and and then Elias comes in. He said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And then he like punches it. So there is like these two camps. Like the guys don't even live the same place. Like Kevin Dillon is in Barnes's crew and a couple, and I think John C. McGinley, John C. McGinley. I almost called him John C. Riley, and a couple, and John C. McGinley is in like every Oliver Stone movie for like the next 10 years.
I know. I have, not to interrupt the flow, but I have some issues with John C. McGinley in this movie. Sure. It's very difficult to watch him in this as knowing like his comedic performances because like he plays it identically.
Yeah,
It's like
it's Scrubs.
it's too
in
funny.
Vietnam.
He's being
Yeah.
too funny, and he
Yeah.
doesn't mean to, and I think it's just who he is. But it's
Yeah.
like, it's really broken.
Yeah, I agree.
Before
with you.
Scrubs, I always knew him as the guy in all the Oliver Stone movies.
Right.
I knew
Oh,
his
funny, yeah.
name because he's in literally every single one.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if it's just a small, but he's got a big part in Wall Street. He's got a big part in Talk Radio. I know he pops up somewhere in Born on the 4th of July, but I know that's just a cameo. But yeah, this is, and I always I forgot how early in the movie this whole scene comes.
Yeah.
I thought this My Lai thing happened like late act 2.
I
I'm like,
forgot how
fuck, it's
early they kill off Defoe. Like he's
Yeah.
dead just over maybe halfway through the film, and I
Yeah.
don't know what the timing is.
I
but
remember him dying much later also.
Yeah,
I remember that
same,
being a
same.
climactic thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I love that moment though. Like to speak to the character experience, you guys have already kind of said it, but like the absence of any morality or any moral clarity, and almost the sort of like disbelief that it could be this heinous, and then he finally shows up and brings some relief of like, oh yes, this is obviously horrible.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Somebody is here to say this is
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
And that defines that character's morality very clearly for who Charlie Sheen has to choose between in a way that the movie hasn't up until that.
It's a great sequence.
Yeah.
It's just a masterful like orchestration of all these chaotic emotions, I think, and then to put them into stark clarity in a very clear moment at the end. It feels good in a moral way. You're like, okay, at least I know what the good and bad are now. Like, at least I
Right.
can like point to someone acting with good intentions versus the bad person. And there is, even in the complexity of storytelling, there's a human need to be like, well, who do I root for? What's going on? Who do I identify with here?
Yeah, well, you see how thoughtful. I mean, because it's interesting because like the Elias character early on, it's like, oh, this guy like does drugs with with these young kids, and I mean, side note. How many people died in that rifle bong thing? I mean, somebody could have.
Sure.
Somebody had to have done. Not in real life. I'm not in the movie.
Yeah,
but I'm saying
yeah.
like, that's just dangerous.
It does seem like a bad idea.
It's just
I
like a
will say.
really bad idea, which I think
Yeah.
is the movie to its credit is sort of making that point. But when, I think there's a lot of Oliver Stone, and particularly in this movie, that's very on the nose. But there's a line in this movie that really stuck out to me. And I think it's on the nose. It's right after My Lai, where he's sitting with Defoe, and they'll kind of sit. It's like a very peaceful moment, and he says, "We've been kicking other people's asses for so long. I figure it's time we got ours kicked."
Yeah.
And I think that's Vietnam. And I think that's what you kind of opened with is you grew up thinking that America won the Vietnam War.
Mm.
Oliver Stone is not for 1 second. He's saying we lost ourselves. We lost our soul. I mean, the tagline for this movie is the first casualty of war is innocence. And I think that's what this movie is. That's how they marketed this movie. So it's something you were sort of intimating a little while ago. I think that's how they marketed this movie. It's just like, this is how it really was. This is not Deer Hunter. This is not Apocalypse Now. Both of which were, I don't think Apocalypse Now was even trying to, it was Vietnam as allegory. It was Heart of Darkness, but Deer Hunter, which we're going to cover in a later episode, was very controversial because POWs were not forced to play Russian roulette. And then they tried to walk that back. No, it's a metaphor. But it's like, no, but you're the first, because Deer Hunter was the first Vietnam movie, the first big budget Vietnam movie. There had been that documentary, I think it's called Hearts and Minds a few years earlier. But as far as a narrative movie, Deer Hunter beat Apocalypse Now. And that same dynamic comes up with this movie and another movie we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, I like that line. As on the nose as Oliver Stone, and I really thought that line was really well delivered, and that is what this movie's about. It's just like America is going to get its ass kicked because it's time, and obviously this is not, they don't even get into why were we in Vietnam. Because these soldiers don't know that, don't give a shit because they're there and just trying to survive. This movie is not interested in why do we get into that? I mean, actually, Oliver Stone goes into that a lot in JFK. Like
he does it a lot. I mean, like I don't think it's fair to call that a flaw of this movie.
No.
Although it's again,
I'm not either.
Again, its sentimentality about the American soldier experience feels in some way limited, considering what Oliver Stone would later kind of try to conquer with Born on the 4th of July and Heaven and Earth and JFK. Like he would sort of try to sort of see all sides of this thing.
Yeah, it's the beginning of a trilogy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but even in like his like people's history stuff, like, or even in trying to teach a high school class, like he is trying. As time goes on, I think he wants to create a bigger scope about what this whole thing was and what it meant on a global scale, and what he had more interest in that than this film reveals. And again, I always feel weird, like this movie being celebrated for the limited slice of exposure or storytelling that it does accomplish very well, I can't help but see like, yeah, but there's
Well,
all this other stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
let's get into this. Where this is my take, and I don't think you guys disagree, but I want to pull this out a little bit. Not only do I not think this is the best Vietnam movie, I don't even think this is the best Vietnam movie directed by Oliver Stone. I think Born on the 4th of July is a much more accomplished, because he's telling someone else's story. I think he has a more of a clarity and an objectivity, and I think that Born on the 4th of July, you know, Coming Home is a movie about after Vietnam. Deer Hunter is about sort of both, like the field. This is a movie that's about the field. Born on the 4th of July is sort of about both, and he's telling a story that's not his, that he wanted to do before this. I mean, they were going to do Born on the 4th of July in the 70s with Al Pacino, with I think Alan Parker directing, and it fell apart at the last minute. And I feel like Platoon walks so Born on the 4th of July could run, but I also think that there are other Vietnam movies which would not have gotten made were it not for the success of this movie. Do you guys remember Casualties of War? Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
I actually think that's a stronger Vietnam movie, even though Brian De Palma was not a veteran, because it's very focused in that they're telling about this one story. Obviously, that movie doesn't get made if Platoon doesn't make $138 million. What's interesting is that Kubrick had already shot Full Metal Jacket and took so long to shoot and edit that while he's in post, Stone shoots, edits, and releases this movie. And Full Metal Jacket doesn't come out for another 6 months. And Kubrick felt, and I think Full Metal Jacket does okay, and it's a great movie, and I prefer it to this, even though I think it's very different, even just geographically, because that's taking place in a city, and none of the Vietnam movies do. They're always in the bush. But this is what scared Kubrick off doing his Holocaust movie, because Schindler's List had come out, and he didn't want that same thing to happen again. He felt like he kind of got scooped. But this brings me back to my gateway thing. I think this is a gateway to better Vietnam movies, and I think it's a gateway to better Oliver Stone movies, but I don't know that either of those things happen without Platoon. And Platoon is very, very, very important. Because I think
it's still
you agree with that?
I do. I agree with that. I think it still carves out such a unique territory for itself that it's hard for me to even compare Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now and Casualties of War, because it's like you're right on the sort of commerce or sort of like the industry level, but every single one of those movies, partly just by nature of who made them, just fundamentally who made them, are so specific to their point of view. Right. I mean, Casualties of War, Brian De Palma was doing anti-Vietnam protest stuff, in Hi Mom and all these other things.
Yeah.
And that's a movie made by a conscientious objector,
absolutely,
activist, filmmaker, artist.
Right. Yeah.
This is not.
No.
Platoon is not.
Yes.
And so it doesn't, and Kubrick, he's on his own fucking trip about like what matters to him. And Cimino is trying to make these sort of big, grand internal epics. And Coppola's doing phantasmagoric, Hearts of Darkness. Like they're all doing their own thing, and they're kind of using this to sort of speak to that. But so they're all obviously related in many ways in terms of one leading to another or coming on this continuum of time and when they would come out. But I think that even though I agree with you, there are some of those movies I like better and find in some ways more weirdly emotionally involving. None of them do what this does. I agree. So it's sort of like, okay, well, it just has its own total value, its own totally unique value in that genre.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's funny. Like you read the tagline and you said it's about the loss of innocence, and it's so funny because that I think is its weak point to me is that. I guess it's about that, and I think he wants it to be about that, but part of him doesn't want it to be about that, and I do agree with Kalen that I feel the movie fighting with itself a little bit, and the reason I really do like Platoon, and I like those other movies as well, but Platoon does stand alone because it almost feels like it's on the edge of saying less about it, and thus being more true about it. Sure, it's such a confusing time in history, and the you can see the structure of the story, of him trying to corral this unexplainable, uncorrallable story. And there's a number of guardrails. You have this sort of elevation of these two, a good and a bad angel. You see that you have the structure, you have the sort of episodic nature, and you have the bookend, you have the voiceover. There's all these corralling mechanisms he puts on the story. And I think the idea of the morality of the loss of innocence as an extra corralling structure on the story or shape of the story is the part I don't need. It's the part of it that I like the least about it.
Isn't it interesting though? I mean, this is the kind of like talk and criticism I get really excited about and makes me even like the movie more. Is like what you said about it being on the verge of saying something clear, but it's so muddled and so unclear that you wish it was being less clear or effort swinging a bit.
Yeah.
That makes me like the movie because I like the perspective of that. I really love the tangled confusion of it, which again, I just don't think is necessarily marked by its winning Best Picture. I think they are awarding the movie that the movie seems to want to be or seems to suggest it might be.
They're awarding
not
it,
the movie I want it to be.
That's
You know,
100% right. That is exactly right. I think they're rewarding it for its clarity and its moral stance and its filmmaking acumen and all this stuff. Whereas those are the parts I sort of don't like as much about the movie. So I think it is very interesting. I think that's all right.
A real human face was put on this war. And I think to his credit, in the third part of his trilogy, Heaven and Earth, I don't know if you guys have seen that movie.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't think it totally works, but I do give him a lot of points for looking at not only the Vietnamese perspective, but a Vietnamese woman, because Oliver Stone is not a great woman's director. He's just not interested. I can't think of really a great female performance in any of his movies.
Juliette Lewis, Mallory Knox.
Yeah, okay.
But,
yeah,
but I mean,
certainly effective. He's just not interested. It's not that he's
yeah.
not capable.
Yeah,
He just
yeah,
is
yeah.
never. I think Heaven and Earth might be the only movie that even has a female protagonist. I'd have to rack my brain.
Yeah.
That's just not where he's at. So I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I think that was an interesting place to take the trilogy.
Very.
It's just like, okay,
You want
well,
that movie to be better than it is. I agree with you.
I think the most effective part of that movie, ironically, is the part where they're in America and Tommy Lee Jones has PTSD.
Yeah.
But that's making it about that's just what I remember from that movie. I just remember being really blown away by that section of it, which is not in Vietnam. But yes, it points for full props for intent.
Totally.
Especially that point in his career. What's interesting about what's going on in 1986 is the biggest hit of the year is Top Gun, movie I love, which is it's not about Vietnam, but
Jingoistic.
very jingoistic. And the fact that the biggest movie of the year and the best picture of the year could not be, or just two sides looking at combat, if we can just use that word.
Sure.
I think that's very interesting. And I think that might have played into why Oscar voters were, because obviously Top Gun was still playing in theaters.
Yeah.
I mean,
another brilliant gateway into making Born on the 4th of July, which I agree with you is a better movie, but also it's just it's so of its moment and of it and necessary to make it that way.
He had qualms about using Cruise for that reason. And
perfect though.
But no, he was perfect. But Tom Cruise's then agent, Paula Wagner, who ended up being his producing partner, actually called Oliver Stone up and said, let's activate Born on the 4th of July for Tom Cruise.
Great.
And that's how it got made.
Awesome.
He got the biggest movie star in the world. And he himself was coming off a huge hit and an Oscar winner. So it's like the perfect collision.
Totally. Totally great.
No. I mean, I'll say something else now, actually. That Kalen and I have been talking recently about how in times of sort of economic stability and peace, that the country actually gets a chance to reflect on itself a little bit, is a conversation we've been having for months now.
And this is one of those times. Time we're talking about.
Well, I got reminded of it specifically with the sort of pairing of Top Gun and Platoon. Not that those are they're doing their own thing in their own way.
Right.
But it is interesting to watch these sort of almost conflicting glorifications of different characters and different conflicts.
Right.
And in implying sort of a moral lens to either of these things feels fraught in a lot of ways.
Well, I had an observation about that, which is very interesting. Until you said it right now, I didn't really think of this as it's kind of a mini version of maybe the larger things that we'd been talking about in terms of where generational displacement lands or whatever. But it's definitely just before Iraq, and it's it's in this sort of pseudo Cold War kind of phasing out, kind of that's passe now. But this question of am I going to become an evil person or a good person is really like a bunch of the movies of the year. Like I'm looking at this thing being like, this is a recurrent theme. It's in Platoon, of course, like it's kind of on the nose, but like it's the core of, how about this? Blue Velvet.
Yep.
It's the core of Manhunter. It's
Yep.
the core of The Fly.
Yep.
It's, in some ways, it's kind of the core of Little Shop of Horrors.
Sure.
It's like, it's the core of River's Edge. It's like, there's all these, From Beyond. Like, all these movies are like, am I going to become the monster?
Yes.
That may or may not be already inside me. That is looking to pull me in this direction of immorality and evil and darkness, or can I stay in the light and I can become the good cop or the hero or the good boy who doesn't turn into Dennis Hopper, the non-pervert psycho, you know, like all of these movies, like it is definitely present in a ton of the great texts of this era.
Yeah, and it's this idea of not just repression, but late sort of like overt oppression into a seedy underbelly.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I mean, that is the 80s to me. There is a sense of a glossy sense of achievement, perfection, stability, and everyone around at the time was like, something's fucked up, guys.
God,
like
it's
seedy underbelly.
It's At Close Range, it's The Hitcher, it's Psycho 3, it's Texas Chainsaw
let's use that
2.
opportunity.
It's fucking all of them.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all of them.
Well, since we're talking about the year, let's transition to our next category, which will kind of move us out of Platoon. So, categorically denied. Before we get to Best Picture, let's see if Platoon was worthy of the other 3 Oscars it won. So, Oliver Stone wins Best Director. He beats David Lynch for Blue Velvet, Woody Allen for Hannah and Her Sisters, Roland Joffe for The Mission, James Ivory for A Room with a View. I want to point out one stat before we debate this, is that David Lynch was the only nomination that Blue Velvet got, and the same thing happens to him in 2001 with Mulholland Drive. That's happened 12 times in Oscar history where a director is its movie's sole nomination. I'm not going to do all 12. I'll just throw out 2. Scorsese's nominated for Last Temptation of Christ. Robert Altman's nominated for Shortcuts.
Wow.
So just those are the 2 notable. So I just think it's interesting that, because I assumed that Blue Velvet got 1 or 2 other nominations until I hit the books. And so anyway, going back to the original question. So Stone beats Lynch, Woody Allen, Roland Joffe, James Ivory. What do you think? Him against those 4 guys. Do you think that's the right call?
No.
Okay.
We're going to segue now to Kalen's part of the podcast.
I'll save it. It's
Well,
David.
just talking about these 4 guys. Who do you think?
It's David Lynch.
David Lynch.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with David.
I would say Woody
Although
Allen.
I would say, oh wait,
No.
let's talk about that. Hold on.
I'll say Woody Allen.
Oh, disagree.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, interesting.
So you guys say Lynch, I say Woody Allen. Okay, that's fine.
Wait, no, I want to talk about that. I'm
Okay.
I'm caught off guard because I thought I had a good read on you. What about is this for that movie specifically?
Oh yeah, I'm talking about these movies specifically. I think Stone does a great job. I think that he's got better movies ahead of him. If I were voting, I'd vote Woody Allen, Hannah and Her Sisters. Not knowing,
For
of course.
director and picture.
Well, we're gonna get to picture later.
Oh,
But just director.
We're talking
I'm just
about
thinking about
we're
the
talking about
direction
just
of the film.
director now.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's my take. Well, that's fine. So you guys say
No,
Lynch?
I know. I'm trying to think it through. To me, I guess the direction of that film specifically, this is probably the wrong word, but it feels glib to me. Like the direction feels glib a little bit in terms of its glossiness, its fastness.
Of Hannah.
Yes, Hannah
Okay.
and Her Sister specifically.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think?
It's just Woody. I mean, I think it's a very, 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 very good Woody Allen movie. I don't think it comes close to a good 24 other movies of this year.
Well, we're talking just about what's
Yeah,
nominated.
I mean, directing.
I'm talking about
like-
these 5
yeah, yeah.
nominees. That's all
I
we
think
can talk about right now.
I think that and to me, Stone is certainly a runner-up to Lynch.
I
in
would
that
go.
respect.
Yeah, I would
And
go
then
Lynch.
and it's James Ivory and who's the
Roland
last?
Roland
Joffe.
Joffe.
Roland Joffe. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about the movies in a minute. That'll be the last part of it.
And I would put Woody Allen in third, I think, in that category, actually.
Okay. So we're not that far off.
Yeah, not that far off. I had to think about Roland Joffe and the Merchant Ivory gang.
So Kalen tipped his hand on this one. So it wins Best Editing. It beats Aliens, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Mission, and Top Gun.
It's Aliens.
It's Aliens. I watched it last night.
By the way, now we won't go on a long tangent, but Aliens is so the reason
Let me interrupt. I think it's Aliens also.
Yeah.
Right. But the reason I'm so convinced of this is that I think other than it having some good scenes, the editing of the extended Aliens is a travesty. It's like a disaster.
Interesting.
To me, the pacing is wrong. And Aliens, the theatrical, is right. And it is so right. And I see this with Cameron's movies all the time. Like pretty much all of the ones that have extended versions. Extended T2, I think it does not work. I don't think it even works. I think it's like bad. And Aliens, I think it's so perfectly tight.
It's so fucking awesome.
I have one thing I want to push back on, though. I think I agree with you. There's one thing, and maybe I have this wrong as far as what's extended and what's...
I like this. I know what you're gonna say. I think it's the scene where you find out that she had a child and that she's.
Yeah.
I get it's a good scene. It's a good scene, and it might even work. It might even work if you only edited that scene into the film. But that's not what the extended version.
No,
is.
I know. What I'm saying is, I would take that one scene from the extended cut, put it in the theatrical cut. It's not like you need that scene to know that Ripley could be maternal, because you learn that when she's the only one who could take care of the child. I just think that scene is very cool because it gives you the time. Oh, I was in hypersleep for 57 years.
I know.
My daughter died of old age, and they use Sigourney Weaver's mother. That's the woman they use.
It's great, and it's kind of essential. I wish that it were the kind of I wish movies were the kind of thing that could have like supplemental things where you're like, well, you have to go watch this now. You've seen the movie.
Yeah.
Right. You need this either before or after.
I agree with that.
They do have that.
Appendices for movies.
Yeah. It's just like an important
that does
thing.
exist. People just don't do that anymore.
I just think that should be. Can you make canonized appendices? Like, can you do that?
Well, but this movie's being nominated for its theatrical cut,
Yes,
so we're giving it to it for the theatrical cut.
I agree.
So we agree on that.
Yeah.
So for best sound, it beats Aliens, Heartbreak Ridge, Star Trek 4, or Top Gun. What say you?
Oh, I don't know. Probably Aliens. I mean, I just because that movie is so crazy.
I haven't seen Top Gun in a while, but Top Gun might get it.
Got some loud planes.
It's got loud planes, is what I'm thinking of. And I really like the sound of loud planes. So,
and Tony Scott, I mean, he can handle sound.
Yeah, he's a good sound guy. So yeah, without having rewatched Top Gun, I'll just say Top Gun.
I'll say Aliens. Top Gun's a close second. I think Aliens because they're creating sounds.
You got power loaders and shit.
We're hearing sounds that we've never heard before. Like those machine guns are not regular machine guns. I mean, Top Gun, it's really between those two, throw a dart, but I'd give the edge to Aliens. So let's see if our innocence was the casualty of this war. It's time to test our hindsight with the verdict. So against Children of a Lesser God, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Mission, and A Room with a View, was Platoon the best movie nominated this year? Kalen.
Yes. And I'd say yes, but I and this is like I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to strongly state it is not even close to the best.
We're talking about all these five.
Of these five, I think it is the best one.
Hands down, yes, for me.
I'm gonna say no. For me, it's Hannah and Her Sisters. So I think I'll do a quick spiel about this. For me,
do it.
For me, this was a really incredible, fruitful time in Woody Allen's career. I think he's really making incredible movies, almost one after another, with almost not a wrong foot put down for the most part. I really love the Michael Caine performance in this. Michael Caine is who beats Berenger and Willem Dafoe, fair or not. I think that it's such a morally gray character, and to cast the most charming presence in movies to pull that off, I think was just brilliant. I also think he...
Well, can I say something about that?
Mona Lisa.
Well, that, but also
his part of Mona Lisa is very small, though.
That's a fascinating thing that you say about Michael Caine, though, because he is not like he's a fucking gangster. Like the guy is a dirty London gangster in his, I think, in the way the culture understands him at this point. Like, yes, he's coming off of a couple of other kind of like sweeter roles, but I think of him Get Carter, and in this year he's Mona Lisa, and he's like this. He's this tough, even when he's in war movies, like from like.
Oh, that's interesting. So maybe I'm being too retroactive.
I think maybe so. I mean, like he's both, but like he can. And
yeah, it might be retroactive because I didn't see this when it came out.
Because I would have said he's very very good in Hannah and Her Sisters, but the other way because he's so fucking. Yeah, because he's so evil.
I just think of him as having been in so many movies, even at this point, because this is the beginning of the Caine Hackman. I'm in every movie. Some very questionable decisions.
While you're talking, I want to look up what else he was in, like just before this.
Yeah, I think though, Caine aside, he does an incredible job giving all the women in this movie a really strong voice. I think that this, sticking with the sisters, I mean, the other Oscar this movie wins, because he wins screenplay also. Diane Weiss wins an Oscar, and I think that she's incredible in this, and it's a character that could have been insufferable in other hands, and I think that it's not even a character that Diane Weiss has ever played again, where she's somebody like, she's got a cocaine problem, like she's out of control, but I think she's like a real person. I think Barbara Hershey in this movie is really fantastic, and I think that she, again, is playing sort of an immoral character that you're sort of with. I think all of Mia Farrow's great performances were on Woody Allen's watch, and I think that she's really good in this movie because she could have been such a passive character, just being this rock, but you see the pressure that is. And I think Woody Allen himself is really good in this movie. I mean, it's not like a brilliant performance, but I think it's a slight this like turn on his neurotic persona because it's about him dealing with like what's my mortality. He's more relatable in this movie than he is in a lot of his other movies because he's wrestling with something that I feel like we all think about.
That's true.
What happens if I die? And also, it's very funny. I also want to shout out last thing about Hannah and her sisters. Well, two more things. One, I like how he's juggling a lot of stories in this movie, and he keeps it all fresh. I think this is a very well-deserved screenplay Oscar for him. But I also want to shout out the casting in this movie because here are the people that just breeze through this movie with a couple lines. In just one shot of this movie, I think it's Unbroken, we see Louis Black, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, J.T. Walsh, and John Turturro. All very young, right, or at least early in their careers. So this the fact that these people, that his casting director was like, oh, let's put these people in for like just a couple lines.
Yeah.
We see all of them in one shot.
It's great.
These are all people who are just about to become big or like on their way. For me, this is a top 3 Woody Allen movie. So this is a clear.
Yeah, I might even agree with you about that. Like, it's very funny, very entertaining, very engaging. The performances are fantastic. The writing is great.
Every performance in
it's
this movie.
incredibly precise.
Yeah.
It's as sharp as his dialogue can be, basically.
Like 100 minutes, I think. If
yeah,
that.
and it's like, no complaints. I just don't like it.
That's how I feel too.
You don't like it?
I do like it. I like it a lot.
You don't like it more than
yeah,
okay.
I've been since you said this, I've been wrestling with it because I liked the movie fine. I liked the movie just fine. The only performance I thought Diane Weiss was incredible, well deserving of that Best Supporting Actress nomination. Barbara Hershey didn't love in this movie. Weirdly,
okay.
That's the only one though. That's the only one. Everything else I really loved in this movie. I think it's fantastic, and it is top 3 Woody Allen. I think for me. But it just didn't resonate, and I've been more doing self-analysis over here than I have been anything else.
That's okay.
Like why didn't this movie resonate with me? I just thought it felt surface level in a way that other Woody Allen movies, even though I've read most of his books and seen a lot of his movies, I know that he can resonate on a surface level thing. But there's tendrils that slip beneath the ocean a little bit.
Sure.
This one just didn't resonate for me. So
I know. I think that like this is going to sound harsher on the film than I mean it, but like because I do like it, and I don't. I'm going to say this, and it's it's maybe strong, but it's like I as I was watching it, and I was sort of validated by that Siskel and Ebert conversation, and then Pauline Kael's sort of criticism of that mentality. I was watching it, being like, "Is this bullshit? This feels like it might just be fucking bullshit. Like it might just be a bunch of bullshit about a bunch of sort of self-involved and the common criticisms of Woody Allen." But it's like, is it even honest? Like when Travis and I talk about honesty all the time, just in terms of film appreciation, and when I think about the era and the things that I respond to, I'm like, and Woody Allen, by the way, like I know this movie's getting a lot of shit for semi-understandable reasons at the time. Manhattan feels like wildly honest to me, and Hall in many ways feels more honest. This one, I'm like, yeah, you're very, very good at this, and you definitely know kinds of people like this, but are you spoon feeding them bullshit for their own sort of self-gratification? Like I sometimes have that suspicion about this movie and some of his movies in that sort of same category. All
right, so the part I know Kalen wants to get to, now it's time for the appeal. Was Platoon the best movie of the year, period?
No.
Let's all take a break while Kalen does his spiel.
I want to I'll keep the spiel part very short.
And by the way, you don't have to limit yourself to, if you want to say more than one, that's okay.
Here are all the movies I think are better.
Okay,
that's fine.
That's fine. And then you can do your spiel.
And then I have one thing that I think at the end of the day, and I've probably already kind of given it away, but like here are all the movies that I think that I have either watched very recently in this last few weeks, or that I just kind of know as kind of all-timers to me, that I think are superior to Platoon, which is not to say Platoon's bad.
No, this is not about it being bad. We're talking about what's your favorite movie of 1986 or movies.
So here they all are. Blue Velvet, Mona Lisa, Down by Law, Manhunter, The Fly, Little Shop of Horrors, Aliens, Castle in the Sky, Stand By Me, Working Girl, Sid and Nancy, From Beyond, Something Wild, Big Trouble in Little China, Texas Chainsaw 2, River's Edge, Better Tomorrow, The Green Ray, She's Gotta Have It, Ferris Bueller, Salvador, Gothic, Peking Upper Blues, Hitcher, Psycho 3, and and there's maybe a couple more I could add. But all of those movies, and then there's some that I think are like roughly equivalent, like Salvador, and I mean, I'm being a little bit over, like Gothic is probably not as good as Platoon, but fascinating movie. True Stories, At Close Range, 52 Pickup, Star Trek 4, all of these things. Just forgetting about the measurement to Platoon, like, if you go to a movie a week, you're fucking in heaven, man. Like these movies are, and I was talking to Travis about this recently, about the crop of movies this year, where I got so much more into being like, what actually was exciting to me? Not was good or what was bad. What actually what got me really like fired up about movies or thoughts or experiences. All of these movies are fire up, huge emotional and intellectual like jazz experiences. Like they're fucking fire. And so all of those things I think were like you could make you could make 3 lists of best picture winners or best picture nominees that are better than the 5 that they settled on. Means I was like, this is a fucking boon time, man. Like it's just so good.
And this is a year I kind of this is a year where we could get to 10 nominees very easily.
Oh, for
my
sure.
God. Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure.
It'd be hard.
Yeah.
I didn't even bother trying to rank
No.
them,
I'm not
because
saying I'm not telling you to limit to 10. I'm saying that like just off your
Absolutely.
list,
Yeah.
we could get to 10
no question.
without straining.
And I got when I started, it was such a wonderful exercise that I really like owe you gratitude for, even though I don't know that you meant it this way. But like now I'm like, I want to do this for a bunch of years. It's like just stick to 1 year and see what kind of breadth you get, because you get way more variety than if you're doing director oov or whatever. Like
and maybe record it for a podcast.
Yeah,
and maybe put it out.
Yeah,
like that's the idea.
Well, that's this. I appreciate that, because that's what I do. How I start is obviously I have movies in my head, and then we'll get to your list. But I'll go on Wiki and just look at what came out, just January to December, and there'll be things I forget. It's more something I do for Spotlight, which we're gonna get to in a little bit. But just like, oh my God, I'll forget, and I have, which I'm gonna plug at the end of the show. I didn't do this in the 2000s, but for every year in the 80s, I have on Letterboxd. I don't know if you boys are on Letterboxd. I have the movies I liked ranked. I could not do that for the 2000s. Right. Meaning, because there would be like 3 movies on each list. Maybe one year there'd be like 6 or something.
Right.
I couldn't get above 10. I think that this is I did we're doing this 81er series which you guys kicked off. You could do one for 86.
Absolutely.
You could do one for 84. 81 has a nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
You could do that for most of the years in the 80s, and I don't think you could do that in a lot of other decades. Like I'm researching the decade I'm doing next, and I know for a fact I couldn't do an entire series on 1 year from this decade. I'm not going to give away what it is, but I'll go with what I've already done in the 2000s, with the possible exception of 2007, because that's a very rich year. That's the only year in the 2000s where I could see doing like a 2007ers, Other than that, you'd really be, at least for me personally, you'd be like, okay, there's like 4 to 6 good movies. But after that, it's going to be kind of like...
You swayed me to your thesis. I really feel like this 80s thesis is really holding up and bearing fruit right now.
Good.
That was my subjective experience about 86, for sure.
Yeah, but you could definitely do this for 87, 88, and because I've already gone into the weeds of this. So let's... what's your best movie?
Well, I mean, I'm going to let Kalen do his monologue about the best movie of the year, because I probably won't...
Oh, have you not done it yet?
Well, those are just all the movies I like better than Platoon. The number 1 movie at the end of the day.
Do this first. And then
I'm sorry. He should do his first.
Yes.
It's Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
It's just Blue Velvet. It just is. It just is.
That's not a spiel.
That's the spiel.
No, give your spiel.
Well, I don't know.
When I showed up, I didn't have to ask Kalen this question. I knew what his favorite movie of the year would be. What I was excited to come and was to listen to why it's his favorite movie of the year.
Well, we would have to do way longer thing if we were going to talk about all the reasons Blue Velvet's so good. But to me, I was sort of like, I watched it again. I've seen it many times. I've seen Blue Velvet a million times. And I watched it again now. And I was like, I was really trying to put it in the context of this year. I mean, that was the first time where I really thought about it hard as far compared to the other films around it. And it is just so singular. It is so unlike anything else going on. Its grasp of surrealism, its grasp of internal struggle, its grasp of cliche, its use of sort of pseudo camp, but also like extreme horror, its use of editing. I mean, like it's got some cuts in here that are just like nobody did it until David Lynch invented it. Like nobody did it. And he fucking created an aesthetic that still people can't master.
He's one of one. There's never going to be, I mean, his influence is on other people, but Lynch is, I don't know that I'm the biggest Lynch fan. I'm not a fan, but Lynch is one of these guys. I'll just compare him to Terrence Malick, where even if you're not a fan, like no one else is doing what those two guys are doing. I'm not saying they're the only two that. That's just, I always kind of think of those two. They're roughly the same age. Yeah. I just feel like, because I'm kind of hot and cold with Terrence Malick, but every time I watch one of his movies, I'm like, you know what though? No one is doing what, and Lynch is the same way.
And really, I mean, Eraserhead certainly was like quite an opening statement, but like when you get to Blue Velvet, you just see everything. Everything is there.
Well,
His entire like everything that he's can do and that he created and he invented. And I will say, like, one just a side thing that was fascinating to me, since we're talking a little bit about editing, is I had never watched until a couple of weeks ago this collection of deleted scenes that he strung together for the Criterion release. Incredible choices that he made to cut things, because a lot of those scenes, while feeling familiarly Lynch, are so much more. They're like, this is a movie I kind of like too, and I certainly love the guy who made it. They're like, it's like true stories, not David Lynch. It's like fake weird, not real weird.
Right.
And it's like, and there, some of them are arch in a way that are uniquely Lynchian, but they kind of go on too long, and they're kind of self-satisfied with their own quirk.
Right.
And he knew even then to be like, fuck all that shit. Like, I just want to get to the Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
But what do you think about? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it does. And using that word again, gateway. Like, you have the gateway to all of the David Lynch universe in Blue Velvet, which is really cool to see. And if you know his later works, you're like, well, it's not like Kalen said, it's all here. He's playing with all the same themes and sort of pushing them out the world. The other thing I'll say about that movie is that when I was talking about that Sean Penn quote, I was specifically thinking about Blue Velvet, which is he's doing different things with a visual medium that I hadn't seen before, and I'm not the most astute film viewer, but for me, like, it's like, oh, this is a new thing. This is using the medium in a totally different way that I'm used to. And until the day I die, I'll remember the scene of Dennis Hopper having sex on the floor. Like, I'll never forget it. There's a number of scenes in that movie that are just emblazoned in my head forever.
Yeah. What do you think? Well, let me ask you this. That's just to sort of, not to go too, but like the fact that he's nominated for Best Director, which I think shows an incredible amount of, I'll just say, taste, but the movie's not nominated for anything else. So it's a real statement that, like, okay, we're singling out this guy. Obviously, you would have preferred to get nominated up the wazoo. It didn't, but I think it's very cool that the director's branch singled him out for Best Director when he's the only one whose movie's not nominated for anything else.
And I will say, and not to be like Mr. Contrarian here, but I'm so fucking glad it didn't get nominated, because I don't think that the best movies of any given year, most of the time, are nominated, much less win. And
I think this podcast is.
And I often think it's to the movies.
A bit about.
Yeah, I think it's frequently to the movies that do win their discredit in the long term. Like, these movies get hurt in the long term. They make huge successes in the moment. But like movies that I think are very good but are not necessarily Best Picture winners the Best Picture of the year that win Best Picture, they get fucking shit.
So Travis, what is your favorite movie of 1986?
I mean,
or movies.
Well, I'll do it this way.
Give me a list if you want.
I'll give you the list of movies that formative to me. And so instead of trying to parse out,
that's fine,
because I think Blue Velvet's probably the winner here. The most relevant movie to me that's not on this top 10 list now was Stand By Me. Stand By Me has become one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it so much. It probably, in my opinion, should have won Best Adapted Screenplay. I just love that movie so much.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's fantastic. But I thought this would be a fun exercise for me to look at the movies. And I have 15, but I narrowed it down to 10. I'll give you the other 5 if you want.
You can give me all 15 if you want.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is Travis growing up, 1986, things I saw in real time that mattered to me. 1, Labyrinth. That was the movie, the only VHS that we had. So they played on repeat. So my sister, her babysitter was Labyrinth. So I've seen that movie 700 times or something crazy. So Labyrinth. Number 2, Highlander. Star Trek 4, Three Amigos, Karate Kid 2, Ferris Bueller, Crocodile Dundee, Fly the Navigator, Short Circuit, Legend. Those are my 10. The other 5 that are formative: American Tail, Space Camp, Top Gun, Big Trouble in Little China, Little Shop of Horrors. And I was looking at this list and I was like, oh, this is very telling, because it tells you what I wasn't allowed to watch, first of all.
Yeah.
It tells you kind of what my input and sort of inputs were. And I think the reason one of the reasons I like talking to Kalen about these movies is that our formative inputs were so different. Like, he had cool parents, and I had American Tail parents, I guess. But I looked at these movies and I was like, oh yeah, I remember seeing all these films. Like, these were all very important movies to me that I saw multiple times over and over again, from Three Amigos to even Crocodile Dundee. Like, it's such a crazy year that I couldn't separate artistic excellence from personal cultural impact. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what the 80s is that I feel like these things that come from big studios that are big tent poles and sometimes even part of franchises, like Aliens is a perfect example of this, are also artistically excellent.
Yes.
I mean, Aliens might be the best example in this year about its IP. It's a sequel to a very popular movie, and it's doing what we see now. You take a young up and coming director, you plug him into IP, except it's
happens to be James Cameron,
and it happens to be his best movie. I don't think that's such a hot take. That's fascinating. I'll get my movie in a second. I might edit this part back. I want to just talk briefly about the Best Picture nominees because I think this is an interesting thing that happens here that I want to talk about. So I had not seen 3 of the 5 of these going into this episode. I'd seen Platoon, Hannah, I've seen many times. I'm a big Woody Allen fan. I had not seen Children of a Lesser God, The Mission, or Room with a View. I want to just talk briefly about how these movies sort of stack up for me. None of these movies are going to be my favorite movie of the year, even though Hannah's my favorite of these nominees. I think that what's interesting to me is that I really talked a lot about at the beginning of this season, the stuffiness of these Best Picture winners and nominees. I think A Room with a View is so stuffy and so boring, and it's everything that I don't like about Merchant Ivory. But I want to say, Merchant Ivory make a movie 7 years later, The Remains of the Day, which I think is fantastic, which I think is emotionally devastating. And I think that A Room with a View is just everything about them, everything like that stereotype. I just think nothing happens in that movie, and it's really boring. I had a similar, tonally it couldn't be more different, but I had a similar reaction to The Mission.
Sure.
I found The Mission to be really dull. And, you know, I really like The Killing Fields by Roland Joffe, which we talked about in the 84 episode. And I just found The Mission to be sort of dull and miserable. And I think what's interesting about this year is that you had those 2 movies, which I think are Oscar bation or not. I think those are more Oscar bation-y, like how we think about it today. I think those movies were made. I'm not saying there was no artistic merit to them, but I think those movies were definitely positioned early as like, oh, these are Oscar movies. Well, it doesn't mean that they're that good Oscar bation movies can't be made.
I mean, I need to look at this too, but like speaking of gateways, Room with a View felt like it opened the gateway to always having a slot that was sort of occupied by that British prestige period drama.
I think you're absolutely right.
That is certain for Americans.
But The Dresser comes out 3 years earlier, which I think is a much better movie, but that has it's not quite as corsety, but it is very British. And I think there's some British movies that I love.
I will say that Room with a View, at least compared to The Mission, had the good taste to be kind of funny. Like there's like it's a lot.
It wasn't a miserable experience. It was just dull well, I mean, A Room with a View is like, Daniel Day-Lewis has a very prominent part in it, and he's like this very prim,
foppish
and it's like there's a lot of actors in it that I like, and but anyway, so there was those 2 which I found boring. I put Platoon kind of in the middle. Hannah I was a huge fan of. I really was very surprised by Children of Lesser God, which I wasn't looking forward to. So all I wanted to say is this last thing about the Best Picture nominees is that, like, for me, it's slotted. There's 5. There was 2 I didn't like, 1 I loved, 2 I loved, and 1 Platoon being kind of mid. Meaning mid, higher mid. So I just thought that was interesting the way this broke down, because I'm watching more of these nominees. Anyway, I'm going to talk about... So I guess it's my turn now. So I've got a tie for the best movie of the year.
Oh, we can do ties? I mean, I don't think anything ties with Blue Velvet, but I want to go back after you talk. I want to say there's like 3 or 4 that I'm like, this is the best of any other year. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a tie. So there's 2 movies in 1986 that I just couldn't choose between these 2. And by the way, my 3 and 4 are also tied, but we're just going to talk about 1 and 2.
Do you think you can guess what he's going to say?
I think so.
Really?
Well, is it one I've said?
It was on one of your lists. I can't remember. You guys have both, I think.
We've covered all of it.
I can't remember, honestly. You said one of you has
Okay.
mentioned this on a list.
Okay.
So my second one, none of you mentioned, which I think will be interesting.
Okay.
And you may
Great.
slap your forehead for not
Excited.
mentioning it.
All right.
So, so my first one, and it's only one, it's just tied for first. It's like this is one chronologically came out first. So my first one is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So as big as the 80s was for Steven Spielberg, I don't think any filmmaker put a bigger stamp on the 80s than John Hughes. So in just under 2 years, he makes 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Weird Science. And in 1986, he makes what I think is his masterpiece, which is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I think that this is a quantum leap forward, just technically. Tak Fujimoto's the DP, Paul Hirsch is the editor. He gets outside and he shoots what I think he arguably makes Chicago look better than it has in any other movie. That's a bit of a take. I can't quite back that up. Untouchables is certainly in the mix. But I think this is just technically speaking a huge leap forward for him. He's just working with better collaborators. He's getting more comfortable, more muscular. Obviously I think Matthew Broderick is perfect in this role. There's some interesting casting what ifs. that I think would have been interesting, but I think not as perfect. Robert Downey, John Cusack, both of which you could see them working. I think Broderick, though, was just perfect because I think he has that innocence that you could see him. This is a great thing that John Hughes said on the commentary. I don't know if you guys heard it, where in the beginning of the movie, you're seeing Ferris at 8 years old. Even the way he's speaking,
Right.
he's like kind of using like a baby voice. So like he's been pulling that shit on his parents since he was 8 years old, and they still see him that way.
Yeah.
Which just explains those parents.
Great.
It's just like, yes, you can't see it. I think Alan Ruck is tremendous in this movie. I think like he provides such a great emotional center to this movie. It's kind of what we all know him from. I think he's fantastic. I think you could ding this movie and say that like the Sloane character is maybe not the most explored character, and I just got to say, Mia Sara was one of my first on-screen crushes. I just think that she's a goddess.
Yeah.
And so I kind of forgive it that. And it's interesting because this is the last high school movie that he does. He does Planes, Trains next, and then he gets into the Home Alone thing, and like he doesn't do. I mean, I guess Some Kind of Wonderful is a high school movie because he doesn't direct that.
Right.
So as a director, this is his last high school movie because he's also doesn't direct Pretty in Pink. I don't know if that's. I know that's
this year.
86.
That's this year.
But I don't know if it's before or after.
Yeah.
But he doesn't direct it anyway.
Yeah.
So as a director, this is his last time making a movie about high school, and I feel like because it's his best movie, I'm okay with that. So that's my first one. Not such a hot take, but so my second best movie of 1986 is The Color of Money.
Great.
I don't think this is the first time that an auteur director was plugged into IP, but I think this is the best example of it. People don't know this is the sequel to The Hustler, which came out 25 years earlier. So Paul Newman loved Raging Bull so much, he decided, I want this guy to direct the Hustler sequel, which I'm sure was something they were talking about for a long time. And I think another great piece of timing, the fact that they got Tom Cruise to be in this 4 months after Top Gun makes him the biggest movie star in the world is just incredible timing. I mean, he was already on the rise because of Risky Business, but the fact that he takes this kind of supporting role, I think is just great timing. I don't know if they could have gotten him to do that later. This movie's generally liked, but I think it's too often dismissed as like minor Scorsese or like paycheck Scorsese because I think this movie walks so Goodfellas can run. I think if you look at the cinematography, the editing, the needle drops, I think this movie just really crackles, and I really think, except for Goodfellas, no other movie he makes before this has that same energy. And this movie's 2 hours. Or maybe it's a scooch under. I don't know the exact runtime. It's definitely not, it's not even 2 hours and 5 minutes. To wit, I think that I don't know if you guys remember, there's a steady cam shot where Tom Cruise is kind of dancing around the table and he's making every single shot.
Yeah.
And I think this is so much more impressive to me than hanging off a plane or hanging off the Burj Khalifa, which I think are amazing. I think the physical grace that Tom Cruise has as a performer is present here.
Yeah.
Because he learned how to play pool. And there's this joke that Tom Cruise makes movies based on what skill set he wants to learn. Yeah. Kind of like Adam Sandler makes movies based on where he wants to take a vacation. But you see it here. He just learned how to play pool, and he learned how to make, and both Newman and Cruise, with one exception, are making their own shots, and it's shot in a way that it's like you know it. Because their hands are in frame and the ball's in frame.
Totally.
I haven't talked about Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, who's Oscar nominated. Newman wins the Oscar for this, which is looked at as a makeup Oscar, which I agree with, but he is great in this.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me. But Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio is in this movie. She's Oscar nominated, as is the script by Richard Price. And she doesn't really have a career after the 80s, which kind of astounds me because I think she's awesome. You know, she's awesome in Scarface. She's awesome in The Abyss, and I don't know what happened with her.
Yeah,
I mean, that's somebody I feel like should kind of still be around.
Totally.
I agree.
But I would just kill for Lega sequels to all be this good. This is like the first one. I think this is the first Lega sequel. It's 25 years later.
Yeah,
totally.
The old guy comes back. I just think So anyway, that's.
I think it's a great pick. I mean, that's a great. It's again, this thing that you've introduced, this gateway idea, it's fascinating to me. And I mean, I think there are more movies even on this sort of list that I was talking about that I started thinking about in this way, which is like, it may not be the best movie Scorsese has ever made, but without it, do you get the best movie he ever made? Do you get
which I agree is Goodfellas,
Yeah, and do you get the Tom Cruise performances that you start to get in the 90s and the later 80s? Like,
does Oliver Stone take it seriously if he hasn't worked with Scorsese?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so that's like, it's not negligible. Like I think that's, and again, like the cool thing about this podcast that you're doing is like, when you look back, had Scorsese flamed out
and Tom Cruise never become anything, would you give a shit about Color of Money? Probably not quite the same way.
Yeah.
There's something about the reflective nature of the story that was told
Yeah.
that makes these movies more interesting. Partly, perhaps that's something you could say about Blue Velvet, although I think you're right that people were recognizing, okay, well, this is a guy to be reckoned with here.
The Academy they nominated
we all have
him.
to acknowledge. But like,
Yeah.
Michael Mann was still early on when he's doing Manhunter, and he didn't become Michael Mann, but now you know he was Michael Mann, and there he fucking is, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Jonathan Demme, pre Silence of the Lambs, pre everything he does, he's got Something Wild, an incredible movie.
Yeah.
Jim Jarmusch becomes Jim Jarmusch, but here he's got Down by Law, one of his best. Cronenberg. My favorite Cronenberg movie probably is Videodrome, but The Fly is a beast of a movie.
Yeah.
It's a beast of a movie,
and it's IP,
and it's
a remake. It's a big studio remake,
and it carries everything that's important about Cronenberg. Like he's a guy. I always think of him, just to speak very briefly about that movie, which I'd seen before, but I watched again and was blown away by over in a new way. Of like, he's so good at he puts an idea in your head, and then plays out the genre repercussions of the premise. But when he does it, which is just becomes this gore splatter psycho crazy fest, you are looking at all of it through the lens of this idea that he's incepted in your brain. And so you have these ideas about animal and man and virus and hubris and all these like really interesting subjects that are now expressed through the visuals, these nightmarish, horrific visuals, and the incredible line. Like my favorite line of 1986 is Goldblum saying, I was a fly who dreamed he was a human and loved it, and now I'm waking up and to the truth, which is that I'm a fly. Like basically, is like it's all this core idea that is there something dark in me that is just waiting to be unlocked, or that I have put there that now I can't get away from. It captures the whole era, and I'm just like, these movies anyway. All of which, so none of these may be the best example of their filmmakers' work on some level.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Without this year, does any of that shit happen?
It's the gateway year.
It's amazing.
Well, I'm glad you guys are responding to that idea. The line I thought you were going to say was, which I think they put in the ads back then, was "Don't be afraid," and then Gina Davis says, "No, be afraid."
Oh yeah.
Be very
That's
afraid.
That's a very trailery line.
Yeah,
like it's more the like drink deep from the plasma pool shit that I'm talking about, which is like
our next category is Spotlight, where we can spotlight something from any movie, like a performance, cinematography, score, a stunt sequence, or whatever aspect that popped from us from any movie this year. Kalen, I'll start with you.
Oh my God, where to begin? I mean,
you can definitely do more than one. I'm doing 3.
Well, the one that broke my heart recently that I had seen before, but I didn't realize how much it affected me or how brilliant it was Bob Hoskins in Mona Lisa, which is just down the middle. Beautiful. Like I found it so unbelievably moving as an unexpected portrait of unrequited dork who loves a girl. Like that's basically how I read that entire performance, and shocked me how effective it was at communicating that through a very unexpected side door. The other ones are Benigni and Down by Law. Can't believe it. The Tom Noonan and the Inagata Devita sequence in Manhunter, incredible.
Yeah.
The whole set design and work and puppetry of Little Shop of Horrors, unfucking believable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just and I mean, I could do a zillion of these things, but the surrealism, certain surrealist elements in Sid and Nancy, and shout out to Chloe Webb for what she does in that movie.
Yeah.
Gary Oldman gets all the credit, and she's always considered the most annoying character in the history of like movies. And I'm like, yeah, but she chose it, baby. Like she did it. And she committed to it. All the stuff I saw in Working Girls, which is just like this directorial tour de force about women. I mean, talk about, you want to see a movie about women relationships, not Hannah and her sisters. Working Girls, go see Working Girls. Anyway, there's just like I had a zillion other ones, but those are the ones that like right now sitting here, I'm like, oh man, think about all those.
Those
gems.
are great. People know Bob Hoskins is Oscar nominated.
Yeah.
For Best Actor, so they are paying attention to a lot of what we're talking about,
and Mona
not
Lisa,
all of it.
And I want to say Mona Lisa for like what I think as a prototype of a movie that could and should be nominated for Best Picture. That's one, because I don't think it does anything blazingly original. It's not cinematically like shattering norms like Michael Mann or David Lynch are, but it's so perfect as a crime story and a character study. I was stunned by how much the classic beats worked for me in that movie.
But sticking with the gateway thing, Neil Jordan makes
Yeah, that goes on the Crying Game, I know.
which he wins an Oscar for.
This is very proto Crying Game.
It's playing with a lot of the same.
Yeah,
stuff.
so Neil Jordan gets his shot. I mean, it's the stepping stones, are there.
I wasn't gonna watch Mona Lisa. Just it was one of the ones I watched most of the nominees, and I just didn't have time for it. Kalen texted me and said I should, so I did. I watched it yesterday. It's fucking amazing. And so one of mine actually was Bob Hoskins in Mona Lisa. I think that he should actually take it. The other one is the Stand By Me screenplay, which I've already mentioned.
Right.
Those are very basic, obvious takes, but that's the two I have.
Okay. So I've got 3. My first one's a little heavy, but we're talking about Platoon. This isn't from Platoon, but I'm saying it's a heavy episode. So I mentioned that I had never seen Children of a Lesser God. That was the first time watch for me, and I guess I always knew about it because Marlee Matlin wins the Academy Award for this. It's her first movie. I think she might be the youngest at 21. I don't know if that she was then. Of course, obviously she's deaf, and that's obviously a milestone. But I always avoided this movie because I thought it was just going to be a bummer. I've avoided a lot of these Best Picture winners, a lot of these nominees. I'm not against intensity, but if I fear something's going to be damp or miserable,
right,
I avoid it.
Same.
This podcast is forcing me to watch some things, or watch a lot of things. So as I said before, The Mission and A Room with a View were bummers for different reasons, and I felt that they took slots from more deserving movies, which all 3 of us have mentioned. But there's a scene. Has everybody seen Children of Lesser God?
Yes.
Okay, this isn't like a spoiler, but I just wanted to make sure you guys had seen it. So there's a scene in this movie. I really like the whole movie, and I would actually, especially if we're talking about 10, I would nominate this in a 10. Without blinking. I don't know where I'd rank it, but I definitely would put it at, I think this movie's excellent. There's a scene in the movie, I don't know if you guys remember, where, William Hurt is basically confronting Marlee Matlin to try to get her to learn to speak, because that's his, he's a teacher at a deaf school. I think it's a deaf high school, and he's teaching, and she does not speak. She does not try to speak, and that's the thing he's learning, and he's being kind of aggressive, not threatening, but he's really in her face. He's in his face, and he's like, why won't you do this? I'm trying to help you. And and she screams. The only time we hear her speak the entire movie, she screams, "I'm afraid," and tears roll down my face.
Right.
It just, I was sitting right here. I was affected by the whole movie. It wasn't like the movie sucked and I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I was very immersed in the entire movie, but that scene just fucking wrecked me. And I'm so callous. I'm like, there's my spotlight.
Yeah.
For the episode.
Right.
One of 3. I mean, obviously I like the whole movie. I want to talk first briefly about Marlee Matlin. I mean, she does win the Academy Award for this. It's her first movie. Well deserved. I know she's against Kathleen Turner and Peggy Sue Got Married and Sigourney Weaver and Aliens. Those are 2 incredible performances. I don't know who the other 2 are. That's tough. I think Marlee Matlin, I would still give it to her. But I know those 2 performances are also incredible. And I don't know. I just don't off the dome know the other 2 are. But so she can keep her Oscar. And I've seen Marlee Matlin in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, she's obviously very notable. She was on The West Wing for a long time. She's in a lot of things. But I still don't think she's been given a role this good. And there's 2 reasons, and they're sadly both obvious. One is her disability, but also just plain old sexism. The same thing that Michelle Pfeiffer and all these other women of her generation, or maybe, that they go against. I also want to talk about William Hurt. I'm watching a lot of William Hurt because he's in a lot of Best Picture nominees, and I think this is maybe his best performance. I'm really reminded of how fucking on fire William Hurt was in the 80s, how he really was like a DiCaprio or a Chalamet, where he was like a leading man who was just an incredible actor. And we're going to be covering Body Heat, 1981ers, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. But I think that, he wins the Oscar for Kiss of the Spider Woman, which is a movie I liked but didn't love. I would have much rather he win for this. Actually, I would have rather he win for this or the other things that come after Kiss of the Spider Woman. I just wasn't that into that movie. But I think he's just incredible in this, because I think William Hurt's such a strange animal. Like, he has like the strangest cadence, he's
definitely.
just like, he's like walking in a weird way where like nobody else looks or sounds like him. But I think he shows a warmth in this movie that he doesn't really show in any other movie.
Mm.
You always
Yeah.
get an intelligence, you always get like an intensity, but I just think he's great. The two of them are great in this movie together.
I know, but doesn't it? I mean, like stating the fucking obvious, man. Like it's like I consciously chose not to watch Children of Lesser God this time around, and I haven't seen it in a long time, just because I was like, I don't want to think about William Hurt beating Marley Matlin.
No, I know.
Like, I'm just
this
that,
is
it's a very weird thing to consider the film, and I'm fascinated to hear you sort of praising it this way, not because I don't believe it, but because I'm like, oh man, how did you deal with this sort of like awareness and knowledge? And...
Yeah, William Hurt is problematic, and this podcast is a tour of problematic men.
Yeah, sure.
In
That's a
front
good
and
subtitle.
behind the camera.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just-
yeah.
This is something I wrestled with before I recorded my first episode.
Yeah.
Of varying degrees. I mean, if you just look at the movies we've already covered,
Sure.
the movies we've discussed at this table, you could say there's a minimum of controversy, if not an outright problematic thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I was so immersed in the movie I didn't think about
Great.
it because I saw the character. It's one of my few superpowers that I, for the most part, can.
Yeah.
You talked about this in your Usual Suspects episode, which has a problematic lead and a problematic director.
At the height of their powers.
At the height of their
baby.
powers, but I guess that movie's different because there's no women in that movie and there's no young boys in that movie. You don't think of their
That's right,
issues.
sure.
American Beauty's a different story because it's about him trying to fuck a teenager.
Well, and this one is it was just so explicitly like, well, I know what would happen to the two of them, and that
Right.
was very painful.
No.
and very,
I think it's a
like-
fair criticism.
Yeah,
I may cut this part out. Not that I'm going to edit
Oh, no,
you.
no.
But no, I think it's fair. I think it's fair, and it's something I've been struggling with because I've just had hurt on the brain because
Yeah.
I'm watching so much of him. I'm like, this guy really was one
He
of the
really was. He was
fucking
incredible,
best
unique
actors
and incredible,
and
I-
like risk taking and like
Yeah,
and-
I was just sort of thought like idly like, wow, in a show about reflecting on the history of Best Picture winners and nominees and
Yeah.
stuff, like at a certain point you have all the positives of retrospect, but you also
No.
have all those negatives.
No, because the stuff about William Hurt didn't really come out until he died.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard some rumblings, but when he died,
people knew
well,
knew
but
for
as far
sure,
as
but-
the general public.
Well,
I mean,
because they spotlit Marley Matlin sitting in the audience watching his in memoriam, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" Are
Oh,
you
really?
doing?
Wow.
Yes.
Is that what
Wow.
happened?
Yeah, she had to sit there because she was there for Coda
Wow.
or whatever. And when the year he died,
Oh.
and they talked all like they showed they showed Marley Matlin, and I was like, "Get the fuck out of here!"
That's
crazy.
that's distasteful.
Wow.
Okay, well, my next one is not that heavy, and actually, the next thing I'm going to spotlight was actually Oscar nominated. So this is the first time that this has happened, where I'm spotlighting something that they did nominate, but I want to shed it anyway. So I want to spotlight the makeup for Legend, which I believe you mentioned.
I did, yeah. Rob Bottin.
Is it Bottin or Bottin?
Oh, probably
Bottin.
Bottin.
I've heard it as Bottin. I'm going to say
I
Bottin.
think you're right. I think
but,
you're right.
But one of us is wrong. It doesn't matter.
It's me.
I'm gonna
It's
say
me.
Bottin.
You're right.
Okay.
I'll just,
So
I'll just
Rob
take it.
Bottin is best known for The Thing and maybe Seven, but Legend, in the movie Legend, he and Peter Rob King really create the most unforgettable creatures. This is for Ridley Scott's sadly still obscure fantasy movie. This is the third movie that Tom Cruise was in 1986 that no one
Wait,
has heard of.
Legend is 86.
It's 86.
It's on my list.
Oh my god.
86 was nominated.
It's a big
There's some
movie for me.
controversy. It was 85 or 86, but it was released April of 86.
Wow.
It's nominated for the 86 Oscars. The most incredible of all these creatures is Darkness, the character that Tim Curry plays, which is, I think, the most inventive and terrifying rendering of basically he's the devil.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you just Google Tim Curry and Legend or Google Darkness. It is the most terrifying satanic makeup that I've ever seen.
Amazing.
And,
It's
and,
incredible.
and his Curry's performance is great. Also, the way the voice, it's just incredible. I was 7 years old when I saw this movie. It scared me then. If I saw it for the first time today, I think I would still be scared.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to talk about, which actually has a very natural segue. So from incredible makeup comes a movie about an incredible makeup artist.
Oh yeah.
And that's FX. You guys know this movie?
Oh yeah.
I didn't watch it.
Okay. But you know it.
I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've seen it in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I rewatched this for this podcast. I've always liked this movie. In the 80s, we really put concept first, and we weren't so hung up on who was in it. Now, Brian Brown and Brian Dennehy are two really good actors, but neither one of them were or ever became movie stars. And it's almost like a horror movie, just in this one way, is that they're putting the concept first. It's a thriller. They're just saying, like, here's a cool concept. Here's some good actors who are in it who you may or may not know. And that's just not something we see today. So for people who don't know, I guess you don't know. So Brian Brown plays kind of a Tom Savini, Rob Bottin-esque makeup artist, and he's hired by the FBI to stage a fake assassination for a mob boss so that they can keep him protected until it's time for him to testify. Problem is it just goes wrong in a way that escalates the plot. I won't say more of it than that, but I say this a lot on Letterboxd, but this is a really cool high concept thriller that today would be stuck on streaming and it'd be at 70% of its strength, maybe less. It's a programmer, but what I also think it is it's what I call a triple. You know, it's a movie that it just gets on third base. It's not a masterpiece. It's not a home run. There's nothing bad about it, but it's just like it's a triple, but I feel like it knows it's a triple.
Oh, yeah.
And it was made by Orion, who actually made Platoon. And Orion, I think, was and all the movies we talked about, except for some things on your list, are from big studios.
Yeah.
And I think what I love about the 80s to kind of sort of close this out is big studios back then were willing to do doubles and triples.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we don't have today. They're willing to do like, okay, this movie's going to be, we'll make it, you know, we'll call it mid-budget too. I don't know what the budget was, but it's a mid-budget movie. You know, it's not low budget. It doesn't have a lot of big stars in it. And if you wrote this script, they would say, great, it's going to go straight to Netflix, straight to Hulu. And I'm not denigrating that, but they would cut costs, you know, it would feel like streaming.
Yeah.
And you could watch it and be like, oh, this would have been cool. Like, why didn't you put this in the theater? Why didn't you spend a little more time with it? So, FX is a movie. I think this movie might very well be obscure, if not something people know about. Have you heard of it at least?
I heard it because I saw the list. Now I'm going to watch
it. It was
it.
a hit at the time. I mean, they made a sequel to it. I feel like
they made a sequel. Yeah, they made a sequel 5 years later, which is not great.
No, it's not that good.
But
isn't Dennehy in it too? Like some of the same.
Yeah, the problem with it, and this isn't a spoiler, is that Brian Brown and Brian Dennehy aren't together in FX.
Right.
Because Dennehy's the cop,
kind
of like chasing him, and they're not in the whole movie. And then like in 2, they're like buddies, and it's like it's just not what the movie is.
Well, but I love what you said about it. Like, let's just like, very quickly, and the shout out, even some of these other little things is like the it's a programmer, but there's no lack of passion for it. Like there's a real enthusiasm to make these things and to make them as good as they can possibly be.
It's a class act.
Even when that has a certain limitation of either the talent of the filmmaker or the quality of this concept or just what it needs to exist as. But like I was watching just to sort of finish my run on 86 because it's a film I've seen many times, but my kids had never seen it, or my daughter had never seen it. So we watched Little Shop of Horrors last night.
My daughter was in the play, loves that movie. She was in the play at Yada. She loves that movie.
I just want to say about that movie, which I think is also a classic, and like, you know, I'm very generous with this stuff, but I think like easily like a 5-star movie. Its craft is so far beyond what not just 99%, but like 99.9% of movies that are released right now are achieving. It is the peak of expression of this puppetry talent and the set design of building what feels like the most immersive 3-dimensional stage set in the history of musical movies. And like they're like, what if we really did it? And the cinematography in that movie is unbelievable. The blocking of it is beautiful, is incredible. It is a seamless directorial effort by Frank Oz. And it's like the 30th best movie of the year. And I was just sort of like, man, like they made this movie as if it were the best movie. And I'm like, something about the movies that get released now, whether they're streaming or whether they're slathered in CG, it's like they feel more B movie than every B movie that I've seen from this year.
Agree.
Like,
I completely agree. Also, I think what we talked about and what our lists and our spotlights have kind of proven is the bench is so deep in the 80s, 90s too, I'd say. Yeah. But we're talking about the 80s. Certainly, just talk about this year. The bench is so deep. You could, if someone said to you, kill your top 3 movies, like your top 3 movies, you got to get rid of them. Yeah. You'd still be with some great movies.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
if you kill all your 5-star movies, you still have like 4.5, 4-star movies, and that's what I meant by FX with the triple. Yeah, I just think the bench is so deep, and I think now, not to be an old man shouting at the moon, is I feel like they're great movies every year. I think it's impossible to go from January to December without making great movies. Sure. I just feel like, with exceptions, and we're going to talk about those exceptions as they happen, the bench isn't as deep. Yeah, it's just you don't have it, or it's like you have like 2 or 3 movies that you love, but the drop off from 3 to 4 is precipitous. It's precipitous. It's like, okay, these 3 movies are masterpieces, and then it's like number 4 is like pretty good, and then and I feel like in the 80s it's a much more like, you know.
And this is a
decline
really
is very-
unfair thing to say about filmmakers working today, but like the programmers that you're talking about, which do come out, and often they're horror movies.
Yeah.
It's not that like I think the directors don't want to make them or something, and it's not even that they're not good. But like I'm thinking right now, and I don't mean to throw this movie under the bus because it's a film I like, Travis and I saw it together, but the new Final Destination movie is very fun, but it's not like they think they're making the best thing ever. And the people who made FX did, and the people who made Little Shop
Passion.
did. Like they just really burnt to make this movie.
Well, a sense of discovery is like this is kind of what I meant is that in the 80s it feels like there's still a sense that there's untrammeled territory to go. You can make the best musical movie ever made. We're gonna do the best one ever. And now there does seem to be at least the sense or the implication or feeling when you're watching a movie that they knew what they were doing. They knew what they signed up for. Whatever passe comment you make about these movies, you're like, oh yeah, they're very aware of what's happening here, and they're just making that good 60% movie, that good C- movie, whatever. Like you don't have that sense of any of these movies. It just feels like coming out of the sort of quote unquote serious 70s or whatever, you just have the sense of unbridled creativity and fun, explosions of wild, earnest creativity that felt like it just imbues all this movie.
Yeah, let's show them something they've never seen before.
Yeah, this will be a cruelty. Let's do the best it could possibly be.
Swing for the fences. So where can people find you if they want to find you?
We'd like to follow up by asking people to follow Bob Behrens from last episode. His Twitter handle actually is very simple now that I see it, which is Robert Behrens, but it goes by Bobo Behrens. So at Robert Behrens on Twitter is where you can follow our friend Bob Behrens.
Yeah.
That's all we have to plug.
Okay, as for myself, you can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd, both Edward Clow. On Letterboxd, you will see my 1986 list where I rank all the movies that I liked from 1986, most of which we've talked about. So I'll release that then. You can also find me on Vimeo, see some short films I've done there. If you want to email me some questions, hindsightingquestions@gmail.com. If I get enough of those, maybe I'll do like a mailbag episode.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, so you two want to email me some questions, you can, but you can just text me.
Challenge accepted.
So, boys, thank you. That was a great chat. I had fun. Next episode, actor Paige Lindsay White and I discuss the best picture of 1987, The Last Emperor. Till then, looking forward to looking back.